down. Come on, Ryan. That's how volume knobs work. And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Wednesday, July 5th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Adam Scherer. We're brought to you by Sleeper. 11-game slate for today. Looks like we're going to have a good one. No big early one tomorrow, which we've just noticed. That's not as fun as what I was expecting for a Thursday, but that's tomorrow. We'll deal with tomorrow. For now, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. Adam, what's up?
How's it going? How was your fourth?
It's pretty good. Had a good time at the house. Knocked a couple cold ones back. Thought that I was going to get bludgeoned on the early slate until I get a DM from you being like, yo, you're in sixth. So that salvaged the early. Had the opposite effect in the main slate. I destroyed the main slate and had nothing of value, even though I put in 14 top 1%, which was more than anybody else.
Yeah. When you told me you had 14 top 1% and broke even, I was like, that's brutal.
Yeah. I mean, like, obviously I was up like $300 or something like that, but
yeah,
you know, for all intent, that's a break even. I didn't win, so it's a break even. But yeah, I needed like the littlest bit more from Atlanta or Cleveland and got neither of those two things to happen. And it was just frustrating. So yeah, the tale of two opposite slates where they both basically ended up being the same thing in two very different ways. Annoying. How was your fourth?
It was good. DFS sucked. Pirates were my highest owned team last night. They were the highest scoring team on the slate. I got smacked. Didn't even have anything remotely close. Early slate, I didn't have Miami, so that one ended pretty quickly. Yeah.
My dad wasn't feeling great yesterday, so he was staying up in his room and I was just like, let's put some baseball on for you, just hang out, relax, rest. I was like, by the way, like I have a lot of the Marlins pitcher, so like that's who we're cheering for. So he's watching it, and the Marlins are just putting up run after run. And I guess he misheard me, and he came down. And he was like, "How did the Marlins work out for you?" I was like, "Terribly." Like the pitcher was great. Like that worked out. He's like, "I thought you told me you had the Marlins." I was like, "No, I had the pitcher, not the hitters." He's like, right. "Well, every time they were scoring, I was just going nuts." I was just like, sorry, man." I was like, "That's a tough beat. Appreciate you sweating for me, pops." But yeah, I didn't have the bats the way that you thought I did. He was like, yeah, they scored a lot by the end. I was like, yeah, too much as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I feel bad for Wainwright, man.
I mean, as bad as you could feel in these situations,
sure.
Obviously.
Yeah. Like I was trying to think, because like I was at my mom's yesterday and I was talking about it, and I was trying to like think of a comp, and it was like, it's not apples to apples since he wasn't a pitcher, but like if Cal Ripken had just decided to come back for another season and strike out 50% of the time while not being able to play defense.
Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. Hell of a career, but he's going out with a whimper.
Yeah. The injured list with the designation like trying to protect his feelings.
Yeah, age.
Yeah.
Just 4.88 Ks per nine, 28 Ks and 19 walks in 51 innings. You know what's really crazy? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. First 8 starts went 5 innings in at least 5 innings in all of them.
Was he giving up a million runs?
Never gave up more than 5.
I wonder if he is actually hurt / fatigued. Like he pitched in the World Baseball Classic, so it wouldn't be weird if it's just like like he's hitting a wall because his season started a month earlier or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's just bad. The last time he had more than 3 strikeouts in a game, it's only happened twice, was back in the end of May. Anyway, we don't need to talk about Adam Wainwright because that's sad. So let's talk about today's slate. 11 games to break down. Lots to talk about. I'm on 2 separate teams that I was not expecting to get to. So we're going to touch on that in a little bit. But you ready to get it started?
Yeah.
Oh, we had an ownership update 10 minutes ago. So let me grab that. Previous one that I had was about an hour ago. So no sense in starting this one off with the wrong ownership. Damn, Pablo Lopez is pulling so much ownership. As he should. But we'll get there. I think that was my biggest thing yesterday. I had 90 something percent of Musgrove. So like at that point in time, it's just trying to find the rest of the combinations of, and 50% of Scooble, which would have been really cool if he pitched the fourth or the fifth, but
yeah, I didn't expect him to just like be unlimited. I didn't know we were on a 57 pitch count.
Although at that point, maybe it's better to not let him run out there. Like you want the fifth, but at that point you don't need the fifth.
Well, the reason
I wanted him to be able to get a win.
The reason it ended up mattering was because Sears beat him for 1,600 less.
Yeah. I mean, well, like I just always want that guy to be able to get. Oh, it's dumb that he can't get the win or won't get the win. He could get the win. The scorekeeper can give it to them. They just don't.
And I mean, it didn't matter yesterday because the Tigers didn't score anyway. But
all right. Well, let's get into it. Yankees and your Orioles. 4.4 run implied total for the Yanks, 4.6 for the Orioles. Randy Vasquez and Dean Kramer. Fun. 3% ownership coming into Vasquez, 2% ownership coming into Kramer. Is there anything here for you pitching?
Not really. Vasquez has decent strikeout numbers in the minors, but you're getting a left-handed heavy, good Baltimore lineup. The first 7 hitters and 7 or 8 of the 9 hitters in the lineup today are left-handed. The only righty in the lineup is Jordan Westburg batting 8th. You have a Park that plays up left-handed power. And again, it's not like they're running weak lefties out there just for the platoon advantage. You're getting good lefties. They called up Colton Cowser, who's 2K flat, batting 7th. This is a top 15 prospect in baseball, just added to what was already a good lineup. They have been ice cold recently, but that's not really a reason to play somebody. So tough to get there. And then, the Yankees lineup, not great, but Dean Kramer also not great. Does have issues with left-handed power in particular. Rizzo and Bowers are the only lefties in the lineup. So that works in his favor. I do like both of them individually. We'll talk about the bats in a minute, but even, righties, he does give up some power, 184 expected ISO, 22.5% strikeout percentage. If you get to him a little bit in tournaments at 7,700, I think it's fine. He's only getting 2% ownership. This is a slate where there's not a lot of good pitching, in one, because a lot of the pitchers pitching aren't very good. And then also of the pitchers that are good, a lot of them are either in hitters' parks, hitters' weather, both, or a tough matchup, or all three. So I think like one thing when I did my Sims video, what really stood out, and it doesn't matter, I don't think, which pitcher it ends up being, but it stood out that where I was getting different was getting away from the popular SP2s and taking shots on some of the low-owned risky guys. Kramer can certainly be one of those guys at 7,700, but it's not like there's nothing about him that separates him either from Josiah Gray, Brian Bayo, John Gray, Sandoval. Like, he's just another guy that you could go to at low ownership.
Yeah, I don't have much of either guy. I wouldn't be surprised if I got a little bit, but I think I'm going to be looking at it a little bit more like you were. As we look at the bats, I mean, this is not a standard issue Yankees team. We have them 17th in top stack, 6th in top value. They're 9th in ownership. The Orioles are way lower owned. They are 15th in ownership. Much better ranked for us, 6th in top stack, 12th in value. So we certainly in the data prefer the Orioles. In my data, I certainly prefer the Orioles, and I am getting to the Orioles quite a bit. I assume if you're going somewhere, you're starting with Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, I like both offenses here, but it's just, I think, a little bit easier to make a case for the Orioles as a full stack. The lineup's just so deep. I mean, you have the 32nd best prospect in baseball or something hitting 8th. You have Cowser hitting 7th at minimum salary because DraftKings just refuses to proactively price any prospects, even though we know they're going to come up. So they're cheap. They're good. Henderson, Rutschman, Santander, and Mullins are all relatively expensive, at least 4,700 on DraftKings. But even if you wanted to play all 4 of them, the 5th guy you're playing can't cost more than $3,700. And so that's like a modestly expensive stack. But if you do need to save money, it's not like you can't just turn, Santander, Mullins into O'Hearn, Hicks, and play like Henderson, Rutschman, O'Hearn, Hicks, Cowser or something, and do whatever you want with the rest of your lineup. So pretty easy team to get to, high upside spot, good park for the Yankees, decent matchup for them as well. I mentioned it a minute ago, but I really like Rizzo at 4K against Kramer. He's allowed a 281 expected ISO to lefties, 417 expected WOBA. Rizzo looks really good. Bowers batting cleanup at 2,400 looks like a really good value. The rest of the lineup, all right-handed, but still a good park for power, 180-ish expected ISO to righties. Torres and Stanton are going to be the next two guys up, the bottom of the order is pretty ugly. Volpe seemingly has figured some stuff out, but they're still a perfectly good stack. I just prefer the Orioles side.
Yeah, I have the Orioles are my fourth most exposed team right now. I have 27 5-man stacks. Getting to someone like Cowser at if it holds 2% ownership, I have 19. Like I'm taking all the value that I can from Baltimore. And even the non-value guys like Rutschman at 5,300 are worth their salary at that point. So I am heavily getting to Baltimore, not really getting to as much of New York. I wouldn't mind it. It's just not happening. There are other options I see in that Yankees price range. And since they are pulling, I don't want to say they're pulling ownership, but 2% aggregate more than Baltimore gets them up into the top 10. That's enough for me to just be more interested in Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much of an issue ownership wise. Like Rizzo's at 10%, Bowers is at 6%. Those are the two most expensive or most two highest owned.
Rank the game.
Orioles, Yankees, Kramer, Vasquez.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. We will keep it going. Nats and Reds, 4.7 run implied total for the Nats, 5 for the Reds. Josiah Gray going for Washington, Graham Ashcraft going for Cincinnati. Neither guy really picking up much ownership, 4% coming into Gray, 2% to Ashcraft. I'm probably a little bit more interested in the Josiah Gray side, but at the same time at 8,100, I'm not like super excited, but I think he's under-owned.
Yeah, so when I did my Sims video earlier, he came in as as my second highest owned pitcher at like 30%. Mm-hmm. I hope that doesn't happen. I don't expect it to happen in, my final stuff going into lock, but I did just view that as getting to contrarian SP2s being a good move on this slate. Now, Ideally, I think that means getting over the field on Gray, getting over the field on Bayo, getting over the field maybe on Kramer, on Sandoval, not necessarily just grabbing one of them and saying like I'm living and dying with Josiah Gray here, because he's not any different than these other pitchers. His strikeout percentage is down this year. The trade-off he's been better at limiting power. Only 1.1 home runs per 9, 21% K percentage. It's a park downgrade for the Reds going into DC, but it is 85 to 90 degrees in DC. That park is still a favorable park for power. The ball's going to carry. So it's not like it's great pitching conditions or a great pitcher's park or anything. I think the case for Gray is simply that when you look at the mid-range pitchers today, you have 31% ownership coming into Bobby Miller. You have 26% coming into Seth Lugo. Then you have, still in that price range, 15 to 16% or 16 to 20% coming into Cobb and Lynn. There's nothing wrong with those pitchers. They're just not that much better than the other pitchers that are getting no ownership. They're in better matchups, but that doesn't mean they're 5 to 6 times as likely to be successful. And we have a lot of offenses that are getting not a ton of ownership, but decent ownership that we want to get to. We have a clear SP1 that we're going to want to get to. So it kind of just stands out where it's like, of all of those things, I'm more willing to give up some Bobby Miller and Seth Lugo and turn that into some Josiah Gray and others.
No Ashcraft, right?
I don't think so. I mean, he's 6,100, which is nice. It's a weak Washington lineup. I think Ashcraft would probably be more appealing if Alec Marsh and Tommy Malone were not on this slate. Not that I expect either of them to be good or that I want to play a lot of them, but if you're making the Graham Ashcraft play, you're probably just going to go further down and then get even better bats.
Which side of this game do you like more? Because it's sort of a tale of two exercises. We have the Reds second in top stack, but not a great value. We have the Nats first in top value, but not really that great of a top stack. Which side do you think you're going to get to more? They're basically owned the same.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because they're just polar opposites. You're getting better hitters on the Reds. You're getting better value on the Nats. Ashcraft doesn't give up a lot of power. Gray has not given up a lot of power this year either. I think I probably get to a little bit more Washington just because they are cheap. And of the teams that you could pay up for, I ideally am getting to Atlanta more than the Reds and probably Texas more than the Reds. Definitely Atlanta, though. I think is substantially better than Cincinnati. So the Nats are just what'd you say?
Same, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll get there. I never do, but they look a lot better.
I'm getting there today, so they better do it.
Yeah. So I think it's just going to be a little bit easier to get to Washington outside of Lane Thomas at the top, who's been very good. This whole lineup is cheap.
Yeah. I don't have
and that's sort of the issue with the Reds,
I don't have either team right now either.
What'd you say?
I don't have either team right now.
Okay. The other issue with the Reds is it's not like the Orioles where the top of the lineup, the best hitters are expensive, but then the bottom, you can balance it out. It's more like the Braves where the whole lineup is expensive, and the Braves obviously are just better than the Reds. The Reds lineup, the only hitter on DraftKings that is priced below $4,600 is Will Benson batting ninth at 3K. It's really hard to 5-man stack this team.
They are quite costly, but I think they do look good. But as you mentioned before, like I'm getting to Atlanta over Cincinnati. I would rather get to Atlanta over Cincinnati. So I'm happy that it's going in that direction. If I were getting to Cincinnati, that would be totally fine with me. Right. It's just not happening.
Right. It's like right now, Atlanta projected for 7.5% aggregate ownership, Reds at a little bit over 6%. If it's going to be that close, I would just rather be playing Ronald Acuna, Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies instead of like Matt McClain, TJ Friedel, and whoever else. De La Cruz is in his own category, but whatever else is on the Reds.
Anything else we should be pointing out for this game? It's a tricky one. Like the run total for the game itself is appealing.
Yeah, it is. The only other thing, I guess, and I sort of alluded to it, and I've definitely said it on a lot of previous shows, Josiah Gray is one of those pitchers that I do think there's going to be a tendency for projection models to just overproject the Reds against him, or at least overproject the Reds' power numbers. This is somebody that got absolutely lit up, in particular by left-handed power, the entire time he's been in the major leagues. This year, he comes out with a cutter that he's throwing 25% of the time, and suddenly lefties have a 136 expected ISO against him.
Yeah, that'll do it. Rank the game.
Nats, Reds, Gray, Ashcraft.
Okay. The Cleveland Guardians, 4.4 run implied total, taking on the Atlanta Braves. My Atlanta Braves, 5.5 run implied total. Cal Quantrill on the hill for Cleveland. Yuck. Mike Soroka going for Atlanta. No ownership coming into either pitcher. If you were getting to one of them, why would it be Mike Soroka?
Because he's not facing the Braves. But also, I mean, you can actually make a case for Soroka here at 1% owned. He's 6,700. He had 2 terrible starts to open the season. He went to AAA. He pitched well at AAA, came up, had a good start last time out, threw 98 pitches. It's not like you have any workload concerns there. The concern is just what exactly is Soroka at this point in his career after 4 years of injuries and a really tough strikeout matchup against Cleveland. But he is only 6,700, not getting ownership. I do think that, if you wanted to play 10, 12% Soroka or something, that'll be perfectly fine, as a low-owned SP2. Quantrill doesn't have the same strikeout stuff, and he's facing the Braves. So it just becomes a lot more difficult to go to him.
Yep. Same page. Don't really have either guy, but at the same time, if I were going to get to a side of this one, it's going to be Soroka because I don't want anybody facing the Braves. Let's talk about those Braves. Number 1 in top stack, dead last in value. They are 4th in ownership. This is one of my 3 most exposed teams. I've got a couple teams basically in the same sort of overall range, but I am finding the salary to be able to get to what is a very expensive team and a completely warranted expensive team.
Was there more to that?
Oh, okay. I can't hear you. Is that me? Jordan? I hear nothing. Okay, you can hear Adam? I can't hear anything right now, so hold on.
Were you done with what you were saying? No, you still can't hear me.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so I'm just going to pick up there. And the Braves are expensive. I want to get to them. Don't know if I will, but they look like the top stack here. It isn't particularly close. We have them with a 13.5% chance of being the top stack. Next closest is Texas and Cincy, around 8%. And they're not getting that much ownership because they are so expensive. So when I did my Sims video earlier, I wasn't getting a lot of full 5-man Atlanta stacks. I was getting a decent amount of Braves one-offs. I think using them as 2-mans and 3-mans certainly makes a lot of sense. The reason they're tough to get to as a 5-man is just that the least expensive guy in this lineup is Rosario at 4,200. The top of the order, 1 through 5, the cheapest guy is Riley at 5,600, and you don't have a ton of or any good cheap pitching today. So it can be tough to 5-man stack them, but if you can make it work, definitely like getting to them. One thing I did notice when I did the Sims video, one of the top simulated lineups was Atlanta. And what stood out was, for one, it wasn't the most expensive version of Atlanta. It was like, I think Rosario, Ozuna, like Harris, Albies, Riley or Murphy or something. It didn't have Acuna. It was about as cheap an Atlanta stack as you could get. It still didn't have Pablo Lopez, and it had 3 shitty punt one-offs. So it kind of just spoke to like how tough I think it's going to be to get the good 5-man stacks. But again, if you can make it work, great. And that is the kind of thing that potentially is easier to do later in the day than it is when I do that Sims video. Because when you do that Sims video, you're working with projected lineups. Later in the day, you're getting the actual lineups where, especially on an 11-game slate, there's a good chance you're getting a couple of guys that are really cheap, hitting higher in the order than usual, or playing when they usually don't. So those value pieces can kind of open up as the day goes on. But absolutely fantastic spot if you can get to them. I mean, you're talking about a team that has Ronald Acuna, Riley, Murphy, Ozuna from the right side hitting in the top 6. Quantrill has struck out 8.2% of right-handed hitters this year with a 218 expected ISO, 376 expected WOBA. His actual numbers allowed are much better, and this isn't a great park to hit in, but I don't think any of that really matters when you're talking about the amount of power that these Atlanta guys have. And singling out those righties isn't meant to say that you can't play the lefties. 16.8% strikeout percentage to lefties, 166 expected ISO, still a 372 expected WOBA there. So he's been better at limiting that in terms of expected numbers, but again, don't really care when you're talking about Albies, Olsen in particular, but Rosario and Harris have plenty of upside as well.
This is my currently second most exposed 5-man, but they are also a lot of filler, in particular. Albies, Riley, Acuna showing up outside of 5-man Brave stacks pretty regularly. Certainly not mad about any bit of that, but I have 33 Braves 5-mans right now. So go Atlanta tonight, and go Atlanta every night. But that's a spot that I want to be because they're an incredible offense.
Yes, they are. It's literally a below average pitcher facing the National League All-Star team.
Yeah, it really is. I'm happy that they're not pulling too much ownership. Like Acuna is pretty much always going to pull it up to 6,700 now, which is insane. Is he going to get to 7K?
I mean, with the stolen base upside, like it would be fine. The other thing
is like the fourth game in Coors or fourth game in Cincinnati or something like that.
The other thing I am concerned about here, and there's nothing really I can do with this, they just might be more popular than we're projecting. Like, I think people are just clicking Braves regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it the other day. They were like pretty much 1.5 times as popular as projected. And that's not like knocking ours. That was, industry wide, no matter where you looked. We could just be getting a situation where, people are running their stuff and just saying, I need to bump the Braves because I'm playing the Braves.
Well, this is like, I sent you that message that their projected like per game run total at Fangraphs is 0.3 of a run higher than, I believe it was the Dodgers. And that was like the gap between second and 16th or something. Like that's hard to put together. And it's not like the team that's in second isn't put together the same way Atlanta is. Right.
And then the other thing to keep in mind too is not only do people, I'm sure, just want to play Atlanta, but like looking at the top stacks tool, they're the team that stands out as being clearly under-owned. 13.5% chance of being the top stack, 7.5% ownership. It just strikes me as a spot where, for one reason or another, a lot of players may adjust and just be playing a lot more Atlanta than expected today.
Do you want any Cleveland?
I don't mind it if I get there. Soroka is still a pretty big question mark. You're getting one of the best third basemen in Ramirez. You're getting a high upside shortstop in Rosario. Jimenez and Bell are fine. Not a great park, not a great offense. They have been hitting a bit better recently, which I think was to be expected. They're not, when you look at the lineup as a whole, they're not the scariest team, but they were never a team that was going to just continue being the worst lineup in baseball against right-handed pitching. No Josh Naylor does water the lineup down a bit. The park's not great. But if you get to him a little bit, I think that's fine. One thing that hurts Ramirez is that somehow, so like he's always one of the highest upside third basemen and always one of the best third base plays, but somehow he's $900 more expensive than Rafael Devers.
Yeah. We can talk about Devers in a bit. I had a ton of Ramirez yesterday, and I just watched him get out and get out and get out. And he was like a 0 in all of those Cleveland stacks where I needed just a little bit more.
Yeah. Rosario was my highest owned hitter yesterday, which went great. But the problem was he was with Ramirez in so many lineups.
I can't get both of those guys to do shit at the same time because Rosario was the one that cost me first the day that I went second and third. Now it's Ramirez costing me.
The day I got second with the Cleveland stack, Ramirez didn't do anything either, but I skipped him and I had Devers instead.
Okay. Guys, hit that like button if you haven't done it yet. 73 likes. We're at 512 viewers, so we can bump that number up a little bit. Schedule for the rest of the day. Simple. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next. You don't got to go anywhere. Stay on this stream all the way up until 7 o'clock. You also get PGA Live Before Lock coming up tonight at 8 p.m. The John Deere, I believe, which I don't think is a very good tournament. I don't know if I'm going to play golf yet or not. We'll have to figure that out. Maybe I'll just wait for a Saturday Showdown like I have been, and then I can just get nuked. Although I did have a slight run in Showdown on Saturday that I wasn't ready for. Anyway, PGA Live Before Lock coming up at 8 p.m. tonight. Don't miss it. And don't miss the fact that you can sign up at BetMGM because you can get 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum right away. Great deal. $140 value for no cost to you. And if you've never signed up at BetMGM before, you can get up to $1,000 back in bet credits if your first bet does not win. If it wins, you just keep whatever you have. But if it loses, you'll get it back in bet credits. You have to deposit at least $10. My recommendation is that you deposit a lot more because whatever you put down on that first bet, you have the opportunity to get back. It's like a safety net for everything you're trying. I highly recommend this. I will be using this in 6 months if it still exists. I have no doubt that when North Carolina gets legalized, this $1,000 deal is going to become $100 or something. It's really going to irritate me. Take advantage now. Even though I can't, you should take advantage right now because to get a shot, to put in a bet and like basically have it, you don't have to care. You want it to win. It'd be great if it wins, but you don't have to worry about whether or not it does because you're going to get another shot at it. That's a great feeling. You should take advantage of that feeling. Now, the problem might be that if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, what I would like you to do is call or text 1-800-GAMBLER because the legal age for gambling is 21 or over in most states. And I don't need any 16-year-old kids sneaking in here trying to get a BetMGM deal exactly like I did when I was in high school. Sports Interaction, what up? Signed up for that bad boy while I was, I believe, a sophomore in high school. Oh, man, the good old days. Just betting on the dumbest. I was betting in high school the way that Ben bets now. It'd be like, yo, I found this funny name for the third league, Guatemalan soccer team. You want to get down $10 on this one? They play at 4 o'clock in the morning. That was the dumbest stuff in the world. Because Ben will be like, yo, I bet on a dodgeball game in Moldova this afternoon. And you're just like, how did you find that? And they're like, I don't know, man. My book just puts up crazy stuff. Red Sox and Rangers. 4.8 run implied total for the Red Sox, 5 for the Rangers. Brian Bayo and John Gray going here. Bayo, 8,500 unowned. John Gray, 8,900 unowned. Which pitcher would you rather have?
Bayo, but they're very, very similar. Bayo, I think, is just a little bit better pitcher than Gray. 21.8% strikeout percentage this year. Gray's at 21.1, 3.84 xFIP for Bayo, 4.46 for Gray, 57% ground ball percentage for Bayo, really impressive as well. Walk rate is down this year. He came up last year, showed good stuff, has always had a good ground ball percentage through the minors, had it in the majors as well. He walked too many guys last year. He got unlucky on balls in play. Things have normalized this year, and he's lowered his walk percentage. So all of that's good. It's a brutal matchup against Texas. I'm not saying I'm confident in Bayo. Really tough matchup. Good park for hitting. 5 run implied total for both sides. But either of these guys are certainly in that pool of players you can go to where they don't project as well as your Miller or Lugo plays, but they're just as talented and are certainly capable of giving you a good game at no ownership. So again, I wouldn't want, just like I said, I'm hoping that my lineups don't actually look like they did in the Sims video where I had 30% Gray. I wouldn't want that to suddenly be 30% Bayo either, but I like the idea of as an overall strategy across all of your lineups, saying okay, well, I'm going to cut back on Miller. I'm going to cut back on Lugo. I'm going to get 5 to 8x the field on Bayo and Gray and the other Gray and, do it that way.
I don't have any of Bayo. I don't have any of Gray. I wouldn't really mind it, but this game is just scary all around. We have the Red Sox as the number one owned stack. Now that is a little bit like not real. Jarren Duran is pulling 23% ownership. Devers is at 14. His price is stupid and he doesn't really count. Everybody else is 8% or below. How are you looking at Boston? Because like they're not as owned as it seems. They don't grade out all that well in our top stacks tool. They do have John Gray on the opposite side. I don't really like them, even though they're the quote unquote chalk.
Yeah, they showed up the most for me in the Sims video earlier. I think it's just a value thing, but they're not actually that popular. It's a little bit misleading. Duran is pulling 23% ownership. It's a $2,800 outfielder leading off on a team with a 5-run total. He's just going to be popular. Devers is $4,900 on DraftKings, so you're getting a 10 to 20% salary discount off of where he normally is, and it's not a great spot. John Gray is a good pitcher, but it's not like it's a spot you have to really like you're looking to avoid either. It's still Fenway Park, and Gray still does give up some power. Lefties so far this season against Gray, 173 expected ISO, righties only 132. So those are only two guys getting double-digit ownership. Yoshida, who's cheaper than usual at 4,800, is getting 8%. You have then you're just punting with like Connor Wong and David Hamilton. So I understand why the ownership's there, and the aggregate ownership is a little bit misleading. I am with you as far as like there's worse pitchers on the slate than John Gray, guys that I'm more comfortable targeting, but the salaries here are just really appealing. The only 3 hitters on DraftKings that are above 4K are Yoshida, Devers, and Adam Duvall, who also has tons of power. It's just so easy to get to this team that is one of the, has one of the higher totals on the slate.
I'm surprised the totals in this game are as high as they are. Like 4.8 feels pretty high for a matchup against John Gray. When I looked, I thought I was going to see like, it's 95 degrees in Boston or something today, but it's 80. That's warm, but not as excessive as I was expecting.
Yeah, it does strike me. I kind of expected this total to just be lower by the time this show rolled around, and it's right where it was this morning.
Rangers bats on the opposite side, basically sort of the same scenario. They grade out much better in our tools. 3rd in top stack, not all that cheap to get to, although the bottom is a little bit easier. Much less owned, although in theory, it's basically just because they don't have a 23% owned Jarren Duran. So how do you see Texas?
I think they're a lot more difficult to get to. Sort of for the same reason as the Reds. You have, not only are they competing with the Reds in that price range with similar chances of success, but also with Atlanta. And you just don't have that same level of value here. So these two teams have the same implied run total. But when I mentioned that the most expensive hitter on Boston is 4,900 and they have 3 guys above 4K. The most expensive hitter on the Rangers is Seager at 6,200. Every hitter in their top 6 is at least $4,600. 5 of them are 4,800 plus. And then, the bottom of the order is cheap. Garver, Grossman, Jankowski. But that's a weak bottom of the order, too. Like, they don't have Duran in their lineup. They don't have Tavares in their lineup. You have Grossman, Jankowski. That's not the most exciting spot to get to. Heim and Garver play the same position. So it's nice, like you can use Garver to save some salary off of Heim, but it's not like you can just play them together on DraftKings. You can on FanDuel if you really want to, but it's a lot more difficult, I think, to get to this team because of the pricing.
Rank the game.
Boston, Texas, Bayo, Gray.
Tough one. I think you can kind of go in any direction you want here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the offenses are clearly first.
Yeah, with that run total, it has to be. Now, I'm surprised to see that run total. If it was like a half run lower, it would really blend all of this together, but it isn't. So it's not. Twins and Royals, 5-run implied total for Minnesota, 3.1 for the Royals. We get to talk about probably the best thing on today's slate. Pablo Lopez going for Minnesota, Alec Marsh going for the Royals. Lopez, 10,100, 51% owned. I have double that almost. To me, the easiest thing to do is roster Pablo Lopez today.
Yeah, it's as and I mean we've had a lot of slates recently where it's like, this is the best pitching play on the slate, and then he sucks. But everything points to Lopez being the top option here. Now, can shit happen? Of course, but he has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 29.8%, 3.59 xFIP, very good pitcher overall. Kansas City, when we did the show this morning, had a 3.2 implied run total, which was the lowest on the slate by a pretty good margin. They're now down to between 2.8 and 2.9. They have the lowest implied run total on the slate by like half of a run. This park is not great for hitting. It's only like 75 degrees. Wind is blowing out. But in the context of this slate where you have a lot of good hitters parks and a lot of places where it's 85 plus degrees and humid, this is one of the better spots for a pitcher. There's strikeouts in Kansas City's lineup. There's not a lot of good hitters. Lopez, again, has been good overall. The only negative, I guess, is that Kansas City does have more lefties than righties in their lineup, but Lopez hasn't been bad against lefties. It's just that he only strikes them out 25% of the time instead of 33.5. But like a 25% strikeout percentage, even if you just pretended that's what it is, it would still be the highest on this slate other than Senga and Lin. And they both have their own issues. So it's just clearly the best spot for Lopez. We have him projected as the top scoring pitcher by more than 5 points tonight.
Yeah. Let's see. Where do I have it? I have Lopez at 23.5. I have Bobby Miller at 18.2. So yeah, about 5. Yeah. Looks great. Alec Marsh, any interest?
Yeah. At 5K, I don't mind it. He's okay. There are strikeouts in Minnesota's lineup. At AAA this year, 3 starts, 15 innings pitched, struck out 28.8%. At AA, where he made 11 starts, he struck out 26.4%. Most of the projection models are between 20 and 22%. The bat is at 17.5. I've given my thoughts on what the bat does with minor league pitchers or minor league players in general. But that's generally, I view that as the low mark for anybody that's being called up from the minors. If the bat is bullish on a minor leaguer, it makes me think that they're probably about to be a Hall of Famer because it hates everybody. Everything else zips. Steamer doesn't have a K percentage on Fangraphs, but all the other models are 20 to 22%. Minnesota does strike out. He's only
20% for Steamer, by the way.
What'd you say?
It's 20% for Steamer.
Okay, yeah. So like it's not a safe spot. Minnesota's got power. They have an implied run total north of 5. But I kind of mentioned it earlier. Like if you are paying down below that like 7,900 8K price point, sure you can go to guys like Soroka or Ashcraft or whoever. But chances are you're gonna just have better lineups if you just fully commit to it and go down to Marsh or Tommy Malone.
I have 4% of
Josh
Marsh.
Gilliam said he thought Minnesota was a hitter's park. It's neutral, but it's also got worse hitting weather today than most parks.
Yeah, and 94 park factor for righty power, 98 for lefty. That's based on the park factors from Fangraphs. You could see some variability in that at StatCast. 98 park factor for runs, so about neutral, but limits righty power at least a little bit. How do you feel about Twins bats? 3rd in ownership. They're 9th in top stacks, 2nd in value. They're really, really easy to get to. And I think some of the lefties look pretty good here. I have some of the Twins, but I'm mostly neutral overall.
Yeah, they're 1st in stack score. So I was actually a little bit surprised I didn't get more in the Sims video I did, but I'm happy to get there if I can. You know, Marsh doesn't project to be anything special. He's definitely not a pitcher that you're avoiding taking bats against. And with the exception of Correa and Buxton, who clearly you should be willing to pay for, there is this lineup is dirt cheap. I mean, Joey Gallo is the 3rd most expensive hitter at 3,300. We know he has a ton of power. Kirilloff has power. Kepler has power. Julian's a solid second base option. Obviously, Correa and Buxton are really good. Jeffers, even as a catcher at 2,500, isn't bad. Castro has some stolen base upside. It's a pretty solid lineup to get to. They're really cheap. I'm surprised that they aren't more popular. Like they have a higher implied run total than the Red Sox.
Yeah, they look interesting to me. I've got a pretty big stand on Kirilloff right now. I'm like doubling him up. $2,700 first baseman, lefty righty, hitting in the 4-hole. That certainly works. They're just like they're pretty. It's just no MPEs. You know, your catcher's 9th. It's like it's there for you, but it's wildly unappealing in a weird way. Double up first baseman.
Yeah, like that part sucks. All the outfielders suck. I do like that you have a shortstop and second baseman leading off. Or hitting 1-2.
And like for Correa and Buxton, I don't care where they're going to be. They're just good.
Right. I just meant that like shortstops, because you mentioned Jeffers batting 9th. Like the stacks become really appealing when you can cover the weakest parts of your lineup with good parts of the stack.
Yep.
So even though Jeffers is hitting ninth, he actually can hit a bit.
Yep.
So even though Jeffers is hitting ninth, he actually can hit a bit. But aside from that, you get your shortstop, you get your second baseman, and you get good ones with Correa and Julian. And so that does sort of offset the limitations of the outfield first base thing, because at least with your secondary stack or your one-offs, you are going to be able to still get guys, at positions that hit better typically than second base and shortstop.
Hard to justify the Royals, right?
Extremely.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have them because Pablo Lopez is in 95% of my lineups, but is there any path to anything here other than being like, well, I like Witt and Perez?
I'm sure my model will find one, but I don't see it.
It's true. I can't wait till like a year from now. You're like, yo, I actually did accidentally hard code something for the Royals. I don't know how I did it, but something was multiplying everything they did by 15.
Right. Yeah. I just found the part of the code that's just 1.25x if KC.
ChatGPT 6 is like, do you know that you're artificially boosting the Royals unintentionally?
Right.
And you're just like, so finally.
Do you know that the Royals have been the worst team in baseball for half a decade and you are just making them look better?
Rank the game.
Lopez, Minnesota, Marsh, KC.
Time for you guys to sign up for Sleeper. They are the presenting sponsor of the Deeper Dive. You can click the link in the description. That's going to help you out because when you do, you'll head on over to Sleeper. You'll make a deposit. You got to deposit at least $20. My recommendation, deposit at least $100. If you deposit 100, they'll match with $100. No better way to get a bankroll started than taking advantage of 100% match deposit bonus. Those weren't words. We talk about it a little bit, but we should talk about that. That should be the biggest selling point for all of these deals. I do mention it from time to time that it's like a 401k match at your employer. Take advantage of as much free money as you possibly can. You'll never get a return on money like you will on these deposit match bonuses. Like just doubling your money right out of the gate. That's the best thing you'll do.
The exception, of course, being picking up money you find on the street.
I'm not a big fan of that. Depends on the bill. You can't trust money. It's so dirty. So dirty. I'm not picking up a 20.
Yeah,
I'm standing by that.
Huge germaphobe. You're germaphobe.
If it's midnight, are you picking up a 20 on the ground? Or are you just probably continuing to walk?
I mean, if it's midnight and I'm walking, I probably am not in a physical state to be bending over to pick up anything.
And it certainly depends on what your Roto Tracker line is looking like over the past week or two or 3 or 4.
Yeah, I mean,
because there's certainly a time where you are like skipping over top of it.
I'm picking up pennies.
Anyway, this has nothing to do with Sleeper. This is like picking up. You don't even have to pick up the 20. It's like you get 5 20s immediately put into your wallet. And what you're doing here, it's like some of the other pick'em sites, but honestly, a little bit better. 1, payouts up to 100x. That is higher than any other pick'em site on the market. 2, they have dynamic payouts. It's not just even action on both sides. There are situations where you're getting 2x, 3x, 4x on one of the sides of the plays at Sleeper. That is very different. It's essentially creating a standard issue betting line, but it's giving it to you as a multiplier instead. That's where you can really get up to those 100x payouts. There's plenty of options for these types of pick'em sites. We've got like the Odd Shopper pick'em package that I think would help you out a lot here. Just sign up at Sleeper, guys. Build yourself up a bankroll across multiple sites. If you find out you don't like that one after a little bit, then you could leave it, but you'll be able to withdraw more money because you started with more money. Sign up at Sleeper, link in the description. Yeah, I'm not picking up a 20. You're crazy.
Yeah, I don't like that I'm being lumped into this. Like I'm too good to pick up a 20.
I assume that if I see a 20 on the ground, 1, whoever else is going to pick it up probably needs it more than I do. I am going to give the better version of it. But 2, I just don't trust people. I assume it's going to have like dog shit on it or something. I assume I'm going to get pranked, and I don't want to be on the other end of that. That really is the bigger version of it.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the first one, like I can find somebody to hand it to.
Yeah, but I'm not like that's so much additional work. Just let it go. Somebody will get it. Somebody will get it. I just don't. It's $20. I don't like having cash on me either. It's just gonna rot away.
Find ways to spend it very easily.
I'll play in Pop Shot if you want. Oh man. All right, let's keep it moving. Game number 6, White Sox and Blue Jays. 4.4 run implied total for the White Sox, 4.7 for the Blue Jays. This is the, generally speaking, unappealing stretch of this show. Lance Lynn going for Chicago, Jose Barrios going for Toronto. 20% ownership coming into Lance Lynn at 8,400. We need to just start there. That seems high.
Yes and no. He's cheaper than he should be. He has the third highest strikeout percentage on the slate behind Lopez and Senga. The Blue Jays are a tough matchup, and they are also difficult to strike out, but they are also a right-handed heavy lineup. They only have 3 lefties in there. Lynn this year against righties still striking out 30.1%, 144 expected ISO, 296 expected WOBA. He's only 8,400. So I think the ownership does make some sense. He's coming in behind Miller. He's coming in behind Lugo. I agree with that. He's similar to Cobb. That makes sense to me. It's a very scary spot, but it just comes back to the alternatives are other scary spots or just not very good pitchers in general. So I think the ownership makes sense here. It's just also not an easy matchup.
Yeah, like I do think that he should be getting ownership. I have him 13% to be a top 2 pitcher. That's exactly where we have him. 20 just feels a little high. That's not, I'm not really excited to get 20% of Lance Lynn with a decent enough run total against a powerful Blue Jays team. Do you have any interest in Barrios on the opposite side? Not a lot of strikeouts in this White Sox lineup.
I don't know why people are saying I'm lying. I said I would pick it up. And made fun of you for not. As far as the bats here, so actually Barrios, I think, is another pitcher that at low ownership you can use in tournaments. He's not great. It's not a good pitcher's park, but at very little ownership, I don't mind getting to a little bit of him in place of, say, Lynn or Miller. As far as the bats go, though, it is a good hitter's park. This is the one game that looks like it does have some weather concerns. Hopefully, it looks like it storms. Hopefully they clear out, but something to keep an eye on. As far as bats, Brandon Belt's one of my favorite value bats on the slate. 3K batting third for Toronto. I mentioned how good Lynn's been against righties. He's been like equally as bad against lefties. 380 expected WOBA, 442 actual WOBA allowed to left-handed hitters this year, 259 expected ISO, 309 actual ISO. I really was hoping Dalton Varsho was going to be in this lineup as well. He's not. So Belt's the only left-handed bat that is also a power hitter. Kevin Biggio hitting 7th, Kevin Kiermaier hitting 9. Neither of them are exactly known as great hitters, but Belt looks really good at 3K. Then you get the righties where Lynn is very, very good against right-handed hitters, but they are still really good righties. So I think Toronto is just sort of a middle of the pack stack, but Belt individually looks really good. On the other side, Barrios has been pretty splits neutral this year. In the past, he's had a lot more issues with lefties. So you run into a similar problem here where there's not really any lefties on Chicago you really like. Benintendi has no power. Colas is up. And then Grandal is whatever as a catcher. But, Barrios, it's not like he's lights out against righties. He's not like Lynn is. 20.8% strikeout percentage to righties, 177 expected ISO. You can still certainly get to some Luis Roberts, some Jimenez, some Vaughn. Neither stack is the most appealing, though, by any stretch.
Yeah, I don't have any of the White Sox, any of the Blue Jays. Tough game for me in general. I'm, in case you were curious, I am certainly very light on Lance Lynn and the ownership that he is getting. So I am mostly not on this game. Scares me a bit. There's just enough power in here to hurt me. In particular, Lou Bob, who I keep taking less thans on for prize picks and keep losing them. So right now I have 3% Lynn, no Barrios, essentially no Blue Jays, and essentially no White Sox. Most exposed guy that I have is 4% owned Bo Bichette. So it's going to be a tough one here. I need to avoid this game in its entirety. Rank the game.
Lynn, Blue Jays, White Sox, Barrios.
There we go. Brewers and Cubs, 3.7 run implied total for the Brew Crew, 4.4 for the Cubs. Adrian Hauser and Justin Steele going here. 6,500 for Hauser, unowned. 10,300 for Justin Steele, 14% owned. Nice strikeout matchup against the Brewers for Steele. Implied total looks really good. Why isn't he getting more ownership?
Not entirely sure.
I don't have him either, though. So it's not. I don't have the answer either.
Yeah, I think it's just projection based. Like Steele has kind of come out of nowhere as a pitcher. He's been good in the past in terms of limiting contact, preventing runs. He's never been a great DFS pitcher, and he's still not from a strikeout standpoint, 22.3% strikeout percentage, but he doesn't walk guys. He doesn't give up power, 3.83 xFIP. He's a very, very good pitcher, but you're paying a price like he's a strikeout pitcher. And so I think that's why you're not getting more ownership there. Lopez has a strikeout percentage, not 7 points higher. He's not pitching in American Family Values Field or whatever the hell it's called. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's why you see the gap there. But Steele certainly still a good pitcher. He's third in top 2 pitcher percentage at 14% ownership. Happy to get to him where I can. And the Brewers do add some strikeouts to the matchup. And the bottom of this Brewers lineup is bad.
Like, this is like, if you're against going to Pablo Lopez because of his ownership, this is a pretty easy 1-to-1 swap.
Yeah, exactly.
That said, I have 5%. I wish I had more. I honestly do. I just don't. Any justification for Hauser?
Really tough. I mean, if you want to hope he goes 7 innings, strikes out one guy, and doesn't give up any runs, and hits his ceiling, like, cool. But he just does not have strikeout stuff. He's good at limiting power, particularly against righties, but it's pretty tough to get there. It's similar to Ashcraft, I think, where if I'm making that play, chances are I would rather just save more money and get better hitters.
Speaking of better hitters, are they in this game? Do you like the Brewers side, who's 21st in top stack? I actually have them dead last. Do you like the Cubs, who are 9th in top stack? Or would you rather just have mostly nothing?
I hate the Brewers. 1, their lineup doesn't look very good. And 2, Steele is good. Sub 100 expected ISO to righties this year. 270 expected WOBA. 157 expected ISO to lefties. 290 expected WOBA. There's just not much to see there from the Brewers side. I'm more interested in the Cubs. Hauser hasn't allowed any power to righties. Sub 100 expected ISO, 284 expected WOBA. But lefties have been different. 172 expected ISO, 200 actual, 363 expected WOBA. So I don't mind getting to, Tauchman leading off at 2,800, Happ batting cleanup at 3,900, Bellinger at 4,500. Those 3 guys look pretty good. You also have Young and Barnhart from the left side at the bottom of the order. Not the most exciting, but Cody Bellinger in a hitter's park against a guy that doesn't get swings and misses, that's pretty interesting. Cheap leadoff hitter. Happ has power. And, if you wanted to turn it into a full stack, it's not like Horner, Suzuki, Swanson are bad by any stretch. But that 2-man or 3-man, I think, is actually really interesting with the lefties.
I have 9 5-mans of the Cubs. I'm basically neutral in ownership. They seem good, not great. Don't mind targeting Hauser, who does not get strikeouts, but I don't have a lot to say here about the Cubs. This whole 8 o'clock section of games is just pretty unappealing until we get to the Giants. Rank the game, by the way.
Steele, Cubs, Hauser, Brewers. I'm kind of surprised the Brewers have a 3.7 run total against Steele.
Yeah, you and me both. Park helps.
Yeah.
4.5 run implied total for the Padres, 3.5 for the Angels. Seth Lugo going for San Diego. Patrick Sandoval going for the Angels. Unfortunately for the Angels, Mike Trout, broken wrist. Sucks. Let's talk Lugo, though. 7,900, 26% owned. How are you feeling about Lugo as a sort of pay down option? Starting to look pretty good based on Trout's injury and potentially Ohtani's.
Yeah, I'm assuming Ohtani's going to play today. He's been dealing with that blister issue. It hasn't stopped him from hitting, but who knows? We know Trout's not playing, so that makes the lineup weaker. It's also a big negative park shift for the Angels going into San Diego. Second best pitcher's park in baseball, only behind T-Mobile Park in Seattle. But also, not only is it a tough park to hit in, 70 degrees in San Diego, like every other day, pretty much. That really stands out on a slate like this when you start getting the summer weather in other parts of the country where it's hot and humid. So sort of doubly good for pitching. And Lugo's been good this year. I know for me and probably for a lot of other people, like the first inclination when you see his name is to kind of just write him off because most of his career he's been a good reliever. But, it's just like, oh, well, this guy's still, a reliever or whatever. He's just a starter. He's been starting all year, 94 pitches his last time out, and his results have been good. 3.71 xFIP, 21.9% strikeout percentage. On this slate, that's a good strikeout percentage. It's a good pitcher at preventing runs. 5% walk percentage is good. We just got the lineup. Ohtani is in it, but
okay.
Joe Adell is batting cleanup. Now, yes, he has power. That dude strikes out a lot, and he's batting 4th. There are certainly strikeouts in this lineup. Mickey Moniak, Eduardo Escobar, Ohtani, Adell, Moustakas, Renfroe, Theis, Rengifo, and Velasquez. this is a bad lineup. Like if you, it probably has an above average WRC plus against right-handed pitching because of Ohtani, I would assume. But my guess is if you took Ohtani out and look at the other 8 hitters, this is arguably the worst lineup on the slate.
Could you imagine if Joe Adele married Adele and she was Adele?
Spelled differently though.
Yeah. It'd be like Bol.
Yeah. Except if it was BOWLBOL.
Yeah. That'd be great. Chairman of the board.
How's Adele been doing it? I'm sure you don't know. Do you know how he's been doing it AAA this year?
Yeah, that's I get it in my email every day.
I didn't know if you had pulled it up while I was talking because I kind of assumed when I made fun of his strikeout rate that now I'm going to pull it up and he's striking out like 12% of the time.
That's usually only park factors.
Yeah. So his strikeout rate at AAA is down
to
26.8%.
Yeah, we'll see how that holds up.
Yeah. I mean, last year at AAA, it was 31%. He still projects to strike out like 33% of the time.
You want any Sandoval at 6,900?
Throw him in the bucket with those other cheap guys. The one, I guess, semi-interesting thing to say about him is that his strikeout numbers have been way down this year, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. He's always been a 21 to 25% strikeout guy. Recently, they have started to come back. At least 6 strikeouts in 3 of his last 4 starts. The only start he didn't do it was the start in Coors Field, which obviously you can take with a grain of salt. Prior to those 4 starts, he had only reached 6 once all year, and he hadn't exceeded it. So I do think that there's a good chance you see increased strikeout numbers going forward from Sandoval, compared to what he was doing earlier in the year. But it's still not a good matchup against San Diego. It is a good park, but it's still just one of those like, oh, he's going to be 2% owned if I get 6. Cool.
You want either offense here, other than the fact that the Padres, we definitely don't want the Angels. I think I'm confident there, other than just trying to get on the opposite side of Lugo. If you want the Padres, go for it.
Right. Other than wanting to get to Ohtani and other than saying, Tatis and Soto and these guys are really good. I don't really see a case for it. It's not a good hitter's park. Sandoval, even without the strikeouts this year, still only a 155 expected ISO to righties, 0.53 expected ISO to lefties. He's still been very good at limiting power.
Rank the game.
Lugo, either Sandoval or the Padres, whichever one you didn't pick for number 2, and then the Angels.
The Angels don't look very good today. What does look good? That would be our MLB Sims tool. $180 per month. I get it. Sticker shock. But this is the new tool that we have out now. We have it for MLB. We have it for PGA. We're going to have it for the NFL. We'll have it for the NBA. But for right now, MLB rules the roost. It's a completely different way to analyze your lineups. Before, you were used to just generating something in an optimizer and using it from there. Now, you're generating a pile of lineups in the optimizer, upwards of 2,000. You're taking them from Fantasy Cruncher. You're loading them into our sim tool. And now those lineups are being simmed against each other over and over and over again. This allows you to create expected ROI numbers for individual players, lineups, stacks, yourself. You get to see so much more data that allows you to find out which lineups are actually better than others for contests. That is a game changer. I know it's a big price tag. This is something that has been used by the pros on the back end for years now. Now it's publicly facing thanks to us. I know you're paying a lot. We don't have any trials or deals or anything like that. You're getting what you pay for when you use this tool. Adam does a Sims video every single day, Monday through Friday. Greg puts out similar content on Twitter as well. The tool is fantastic. It is going to make you better at DFS. By default, you are going to be picking better lineups than you were previously. You can unlock even more from that point in time. But this is a tool that is going to be the future of DFS. Get in now while you can. Get used to it now. Get ready for the NFL season and for the NBA season. Adam, how's your Sims video going? When do you put that out every day?
1, 2, 3, somewhere in that range.
All right.
Yeah, it takes longer to prep than most of my content since I'm actually creating lineups and then simulating them. And I've been using my projections for it lately too, so that takes a little bit longer. But it comes out in the afternoon. I tweet it out every day.
Yeah, make sure you're checking that out, guys. Make sure you're following Adam on Twitter. Sign up using my Sims link instead of Adam's Sims link. That will be definitely better for everybody else. But honestly, It's a big time tool, guys. You're getting so much data more than you had before. And you guys know us, we're Stochastic. Data is our middle name. Oh, that would have been a good tagline. I should have put that in the channel back in the day. Giants and Mariners, 4.7 run implied total for the Giants, 3.8.
Sorry, one thing I wanted to say when you were done with the Sims thing. It looks like weather might be getting worse in that White Sox game.
Okay, good, I guess. I'd rather it just not exist.
Yeah, I mean, you're losing a pitcher on a slate that you need it, but
I don't want that to happen until later on because I'm not going to have that pitcher either way.
True.
Giants, Mariners, 4.7 run implied total for the Giants, 3.8 for the Mariners. Alex Cobb for San Francisco. Tommy Malone going for the Mariners. Malone is 8% owned at 4K. Alex Cobb is 16% owned at 8,600 against the Mariners. Let's start with Cobb. To me, 16% ownership feels about right. I don't have much of a take here.
Yeah. So the big comparison is to Miller and Lynn, really to Lynn, because Miller is just getting twice the ownership. We have Cobb fourth in top two pitcher percentage. He's in a park that suppresses power. He's facing a team with a 25% strikeout percentage against righties. He has a 22% strikeout percentage on the season, 3.34 xFIP. I think I kind of prefer him to Lynn given the matchup and the park. And that's, before the weather thing. If Lynn's game ends up getting postponed, ownership on Cobb's going to go up considerably. But either way, he seems like he should be more popular than he is. We have him with a higher top two pitcher percentage than Miller as well. Very, very close, 13.7 to 13.4. But my point being that certainly nothing that justifies double the ownership going to Miller. We have him with a slightly higher top two percentage than Lugo as well. Lugo getting a lot more ownership. I'm higher on Cobb, I think, than the field.
I don't mind getting to more. We'll see what happens if Lynn ends up not being a part of it. I'm mostly neutral to Cobb. I think the more interesting piece is, how do you feel about Tommy Malone?
If he ends up in a lineup, fine. He's not a good pitcher. He projects for like a 17% strikeout percentage. He was striking out 21% at AAA, but it is a park that suppresses power. There are going to be some strikeouts in the Giants lineup. If you're playing him, it is solely so you can get to the expensive offenses. You're just sort of hoping that all of these mid-range pitchers score 12, 13, 14 points. Malone scores 10, and you just win it with bats. He's underpriced in the sense that starting pitchers should never be $4,000, but he's not very good either.
I have 12%.
Yeah, I wouldn't have any issue with that. But he is definitely not. He's underpriced because he's a starting pitcher and he's 4K. This definitely isn't remotely comparable to Grayson Rodriguez debut or Bryce Miller debut or any of that stuff where actual good pitchers were 4K.
No. I'm offsetting that 12% ownership of Tommy Malone with my second most exposure. I don't love this, but it is the San Francisco Giants. They are 15th in top stack, 5th in value. I see them slightly differently. I have them 11th in top stack, basically similar, but I have them as the best value stack, at least as of right now. Now, I hate this park for power. It is not good, but maybe Malone is just actively bad, and this is a spot where the Giants can break out. Do you have any interest in San Francisco?
Much less than you, because I hate this team against left-handed pitching.
Yeah.
We don't have a lineup yet, but you're probably going to get Austin Slater getting 2 at-bats and leading off. So he's going to look like a good value piece because he's 3,100 leading off, but he's probably not finishing this game. Flores probably stays in throughout the game. So does Davis. So does Bailey. If any of the lefties start, or whichever lefties start, they're pretty safe bets to stay in. But you'll probably get a cheap Luis Matos in there with Jock Peterson pinch hitting for him later. You could get Lamont Wade, or you'll probably get Peterson for Slater, Wade for Matos, or something like that if they start Conforto and Yaz. It's just the lineup, they're going to pinch hit, and it makes things more difficult. That's not to say that they're bad or anything. They still have a 4.8 implied run total. It is a below average pitcher in Malone. I like Flores. I like Davis. I like Bailey. But I do just sort of want to be careful with the full stack because a couple of them aren't finished the game.
Yeah, that scares me. And I will walk them back before it starts because I don't think that I need this sort of stand. But they're so cheap. 3,800 for JD Davis, most expensive hitter in the lineup. And you're getting whatever Tommy Malone is right now. So I get why it's happening. but it is scary. I hate the pinch hitting risk of all of it. It's just truly annoying. It would be really cool if I know this would never happen, and like they can't even get Ohtani to be a batter and a pitcher at the same time. But it'd be really cool if you were just taking a batting slot.
Yeah, I mean,
like, yes, you're getting Austin Slater, but if he gets pinch hit for, then you also have whatever comes in for Austin Slater.
Sure, I mean, but that's also like it would be fun in football if you could just roster Detroit running back and not the one that isn't going to get vultured.
Yeah, that one's a little bit different because there's context to it. Like,
right.
Both guys are going to
But there's context here, too. Austin Slater is not finishing this game unless it's like 10-0 after 4 innings.
Yeah. Mariners bats against Cobb.
Tough sell. There's power in the lineup, but the park kills it. Cobb's a good pitcher, very good at limiting power, preventing home runs and all that. So I think Seattle looks like one of the less appealing teams on the slate.
All right. Rank the game.
Giants... Cobb, Giants, Malone, Mariners. Malone's also strictly DraftKings.
Yeah.
Do not touch him on FanDuel. There's no reason to.
No. 4.7 run implied total on both sides for the Diamondbacks and Mets. Tommy Henry, not to be confused with Tommy Malone, going for Arizona. Kodai Senga actually going for the Mets today until maybe they scratch him for Max Scherzer. 1% ownership coming into Henry, 3% ownership coming into Senga at 10K. Do you have any interest in Senga?
Not really. He's certainly not a 15-1 dog against Pablo Lopez if you want to make that move in a lineup here or there, but he just projects very similarly to guys that are a lot less expensive than him. We have Senga projected as the second highest scoring pitcher on the slate at 15.8. Steele at 15.7, Cobb 15.7, Lynn 15.6, Miller 15.5. Like you're paying. We say the phrase a good amount of the time. You can overpay to be contrarian. That is that is all you're doing here because it's not a good matchup against Arizona. It's not a good strikeout matchup. It's a good offense overall. But Senga is does have the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate. If you want to just roster him at 3% owned and say, I hope Lopez struggles today and I hope Senga strikeout stuff shows up, sure, but there's just going to be easier ways to differentiate that allow you to build better lineups overall.
I would just rather go to Steele first. That's
right.
The problem. Like there exists an intermediary in between Senga and Lopez that is just already better than Senga.
Right, but you can also make the same argument Senga versus Steele, where Senga's getting 3% ownership, Steele's getting 15. They project the same.
Yeah. Yeah, but like that differential in ownership isn't as extreme.
Right.
Any Tommy Henry?
I'm good. 7K, doesn't have good strikeout stuff, not in a good strikeout matchup. Really tough sell on Henry, at least on the main slate.
Are you surprised by the run total in this game?
A little bit.
Why are they the same? Like Tommy Henry's not good. Why are the Diamondbacks getting as much love against Senga, or why aren't the Mets getting more love against Henry is what I'm getting at.
And also I'm not sure if you had seen it. I don't know how long ago it came out, but no Ketel Marte again today for the Diamondbacks.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then they're worse there too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Evan Longoria.
Weird. It's just weird.
It is weird because Senga is the better pitcher than Henry. The Diamondbacks, I know he's been good this year, but Perdomo's leading off. He still projects as at best an average hitter.
Yeah.
No Ketel Marte, 2023 Evan Longoria. I mean, there's a guy hitting second that was playing when I was a freshman in college. Like he's probably not the best hitter anymore. Corbin Carroll's obviously great. Walker's good. Gurriel's good. It's still a good lineup, but I'm with you as far as like I don't totally know why the Mets aren't favored. It is. I mean, they're on the road, but still.
I just Senga is absolutely, I think, quite a bit better than Tommy Henry. And I think the Mets lineup is quite a bit better than the Diamondbacks. Home field carrying a lot of water here. I don't know. Weird. Do you like either one of these teams? We have the Mets 5th in top stack, 2nd in ownership. We have the Diamondbacks 13th and 16th. So our data is certainly leaning to the Mets. I have some, but not a lot. I don't love the park for homers, but I wouldn't mind getting to more of the Mets.
Yeah, I like the Mets here. I like the value component. The D-backs are a little bit cheaper than expected since they don't have Marte, but for the Mets, Lindor, Alonso, Nimmo are 4,500 to 5,200, but the rest of the team, Marte is the next most expensive guy at 3,700. You're getting Tommy Pham at 3,200, right-handed power bat against Henry. So far this season, Henry's allowed a 167 expected ISO to righties, not as high as I guess you would expect it to be, but still not great. And, Pham's got power at 3,200. Marte at 3,700 has some power and also has 22 stolen bases this year. Francisco Alvarez is a very high upside catching option. So I like the combination of value and upside that the Mets give you. I think it's easier to just make good looking stacks than it is with the Diamondbacks.
All righty. Rank the game.
Mets, Diamondbacks, Senga, Henry.
Mets, Diamondbacks, Senga, Henry. Okay. Jake, the Diamondbacks are not quite a bit better than the Mets. Just want to put that out there. You want to tell me they're neutral in hitting? I can get behind that. They're not when Ketel Marte is not playing, that's for sure. That kind of a big loss when your second or third best hitter isn't in the lineup.
Yeah.
Let's close it out. Dodgers and Pirates. 5.4 run implied total for the Dodgers. 3.6 for the Pirates. Bobby Miller going for LA. Osvaldo Bido going for the Pirates in what I believe is his 27th straight start. I think I say his name every single day. 31% ownership coming in to Bobby Miller. 0 ownership coming into Bido. Let's talk about Miller. 8,300. I'm matching the field here. I'm getting there, but I do think he's a little overowned.
Yeah, I think he's a little overowned, but he does project as one of the best, pitching options on the slate. In the Sims video earlier, I was getting around half the field. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I wouldn't be surprised if I get around the field. He does project well. He's got about a 21 to 22% strikeout percentage in the majors this year. That's what he projects for going forward. His xFIP's a little bit over 4 in his first 7 starts. He projects for a similar xFIP going forward. So you've kind of just seen what I think you're likely to continue to see from Bobby Miller. Pirates have a 3.4 implied run total, one of the lowest on the slate. They aren't a great offense overall. Active roster has a 98 WRC plus, about a 22% strikeout percentage. Miller just looks good. I don't think he's twice as good as Cobb. If the White Sox game plays, I don't think he's twice as good as Lynn, but he does look a little bit better than those guys.
Bido?
No, not in this spot.
Dodgers bats, 10th in ownership, 4th in top stack, 18th in top value. This is the other team that I am getting a lot of. It was Baltimore, Atlanta, the Giants, and the Dodgers. So I'm not having any trouble paying up. They do have some cheap guys at the bottom of the lineup, but you're paying a lot for Betts, Freeman, Smith, Muncy, JD. Take out one of those guys or, 2 of those guys, and you're finding some cheapness at the bottom. How do you feel about the Dodgers?
Yeah, that's the thing that makes the Dodgers look just a little bit, I don't know if better is even the right word, but easier to get to than like the Reds or the Braves. Because, you could just stack 1 through 5, assuming 1 through 5 is Betts, Freeman, Smith, Muncy, and Martinez. And they're expensive and you're going to have to make sacrifices elsewhere. But like you said, you can just play 3 of those guys and then get Peralta, Hayward, or Peralta, Outman, or Hayward, Outman, whatever it may be, offset some of that cost, and then just have stronger lineups compared to a team like the Braves where the cheapest guy in the lineup is $4,200. So I do like that. Vito has been very good at not giving up power this year. 119 expected ISO to lefties, sub 100 to righties, but less than 200 pitches thrown to either side of the plate. Pretty likely that the Dodgers make those numbers go up.
I'm happy to have a bunch of them, and I will. We'll see what we end up getting out of them from a lineup perspective. Hopefully that comes out earlier than 6:45. Pirates bats against Bobby Miller.
Not really. I got to a bunch of them yesterday against Sheehan, but that was a 5-game slate. On this slate, I think it's more difficult to get there. There's just enough. We just got the Dodgers lineup. Betts, nice. Freeman, Smith, Muncy, Martinez, Peralta, Hayward, Outman, Rojas. There's just enough, modestly owned good stacks to get to on this slate that I don't think the Pirates are going to show up that much. That's not to say, you can't get to like Sawinski at 3,500. That's going to look good, or Henry Davis at 2,600, or Brian Reynolds. But overall, I don't expect to be getting too much of the Pirates.
Favorite stacks?
Braves, if you can get them. Minnesota, Boston, Dodgers.
Folks, thank you to Sleeper for being the sponsor. Thank you to Jordan Klein for producing, although he did screw it up right out of the gate. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next. Thanks to Adam for being here. We're going to get out of here. Don't go anywhere. We're going all the way till 7 o'clock. Peace.
Yo, it's that time of week again. Time to induct some of you wonderful people into the Stochastic Hall of Fame here, and also give away a whole bunch of free subscriptions to Stochastic Plus Platinum, $120 value, and all you got to do to get in on this fun, crowning achievement, gather the family around and say, honey, I'm in the Stochastic Hall of Fame. Come watch. They're about to announce my name. Go to stochastic.com/avatar. Download the Stochastic profile picture. Tweet your wins when you win at Stochastic HOF on Twitter and win a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. Get inducted right here. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and boom, you are in. Just like our friend Zach Skaggs, the ever elusive double win. Thank you to the crew and all the tools over at Stochastic. Not getting the free month, but representing Stochastic here. I can appreciate that. 2,250 here in the squeeze and the line drive. Shout out to Zach for a really nice day. And our friend Kenneth Malakar. I don't know what to say. I want to thank all you guys for all the good advice, not to mention all of you guys in chat. Great community of people. Finally, the Hall of Fame, 3rd out of 7,400, $1,000 for a boy who has supported the channel and the site for a long time now. Congrats, Kenneth. We love to see it. And Timmy, first off, Lavi, I'm gonna be up here a lot now, so get it down. The TX is like a CH. So basically, Cha Kiang, listen, dude, I'm going to be doing this a lot as well, and I can assure you I will not get this down anytime soon. But congrats to Timmy. Love to see it. But, man, not a lot to most y'all, but I'm going to say this. I know nothing about golf, but making nice finishes goes to show you how it's getting done. Pay the man. $800 and a free month of Stochastic. Congrats, Timmy. I'm just kidding. Timmy Cha Kiang. And then how about Derby status or Perez status? Second day playing DFS, and I shipped the $1 25K mini max for $2,500 and placed second in the $3 MLB 20K moonshot for $1,000. All thanks to Stochastic and the guys there with the great insight and the MLB lineup generator. $4.48 for your first week. You know it. Link in the description, baby. Keith, I'm gonna need a punch card at this rate. Yeah, he's been up a lot lately. Keith, $300 in the 7,500 solo shot. Next up is Matt. Shout out to the team at Stochastic for helping me out last night. 350 win there in the 10K Wednesday MLB pinch hit. And we keep moving forward with David Colasanto. Almost hit a 4-figure payout twice in a week. I'll settle for second place and a $200 ROI. Thanks again for the advice. Hell yeah, man. Second place out of 7,100 in the mini max. Take that all day long. And Nate Larson, not enough entries to qualify for the free month, but shout out to the lineup generator. 2 of the top spots. I've said it a million times, guys, whether it's high stakes, low stakes, we got you covered. Just like internet points or it's depletes. Not quite enough to retire early, but who needs that when there's the Stochastic Hall of Fame? See this $25 and $850 in the nickel, $600 prize pool, first out of 14,000. But as long as it's top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more and you're not chopping more than 3 ways, you're in. $120 free month. What better way to do it than that in some of these low stakes contests? Shout out to It's the Plates 99 and everybody else. Welcome to the Hall of Fame. You've now been inducted, or welcome back if you've been here before. Remember, download the Stochastic profile picture at stochastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Stochastic HOF and get that free month and get inducted every single Monday right here in the Hall of Fame.
All right. What is happening, everybody? Welcome to another Stochastic MLB Live Before Lock. We had a pretty good turnout yesterday for July 4th, which featured at the end Jordan Klein showing off his amazing ability to drink beer very quickly. And one thing that I wanted to make sure I opened up this show to tell you guys, and by the way, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel as you come in. Earlier in the day, Eric and I are doing a show with Jordan producing. He was wearing the exact same outfit that he was wearing yesterday when he chugged the beer. Exact same hat, same shirt, everything. Was that correct, Jordan? It looked to me exactly the same. You've changed since then. It was a white t-shirt with an Angels hat. That's exactly what we were wearing yesterday.
You couldn't tell, though. It was like there was a pocket on it. It wasn't a blank white tee, though.
Naturally white or like sweat stain yellow?
Like no. It's like a green yellowish.
Yeah, you were wearing the same thing you were wearing yesterday. I have no doubt about it. We saw Jordan Klein start to get drunk at the onset of July 4th last night. We had a good baseball show. Hope you guys had a great holiday with your friends and family yesterday, or if you're just playing DFS, I hope that went well. Also, and for today, got a big slate to break down. I've got Eric Lindquist here to help me do it. We're sponsored by Sleeper, and if you guys haven't signed up at Sleeper yet, do so using the link that we have below in the description box. Sleeper is not only a platform that you could play fantasy football on, they also have pick'em contests where you could fill out pick'em cards up to 100x, which you're not going to find anywhere else. And also when you sign up using our link, you get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit. So go check out Sleeper. If you're in a state that offers pick'em type stuff like Prize Picks and those kinds of sites, go check out Sleeper if you're looking for another place to go get some action down. Eric, how was your holiday?
Holiday was good. Just worked. Just covered some MLB, covered some PGA, the John Deere Classic, got ready for UFC, which is coming up this weekend. I'm going to Vegas either late tomorrow night or Friday morning. Not sure which time I'm going to be taking off yet, but looking forward to a weekend out there, going to some UFC 290. Tickets are fantastic. Oh, I'm just so excited. Just get me there already.
Yeah, and by the way, where are the seats?
Fifth row.
Pretty damn good. Eric Lindquist getting the VIP treatment. So close to the action, he might get blood on him.
Well, I'm already like, there's going to be so many celebrities there. And like, we're row E. So we're like right in that fifth section. We're going to be seeing some blood too. I mean, I've never been to a boxing match or a UFC fight or any. The only thing I've ever been to, I went to like a wrestling match when I was like 12 or 13 or something in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Have a feeling this might be drastically different and more real than what I witnessed then. So, this is the first time I'm ever experiencing any of it. Been a fan now for all of about 6 months. Really enjoyed it, but looking forward to just the people watching. I think it's going to be absurd.
Yeah, it's so by the way, I mean this. Of all sporting events I've been to, and I've been to UFC events, to me, the most fun to go to. Now, the caveat to that is that I don't like very many live sporting events. Like, I think football is way better to watch on TV than at the game, for instance. Yeah. Baseball's fun, but it's more because of the atmosphere. You're outside, the weather's typically nice. For the actual sporting event, of all the events I've gone to, I think the UFC has the most fun live events to go to. You're going to have a really good time.
I can't wait. Stanley Cup's number one for me. I went to the Stanley Cup in 2012 or 13. The Kings were in it, and my cousin had a friend who got tickets. She got tickets through, so I got to go. We were pretty close to the ice for that one, too. I think Stanley Cup, hockey playoffs just hit different. There's no doubt about it. The atmosphere, it's palpable. But yeah, I think that Final Fours I've been to the Masters now. It's just so fun. Just life is better with sports. That's what we kind of say here at Stochastic.
All right, look at you going right to the OKR meetings. You're pulling out our mission statement, and you're trying to use it on shows like a total square that you are. So,
well,
Eric
I'm just saying, friends,
going to be at the UFC this weekend. He's going to have a good time, and it should be a fun card. So I'll be looking forward to that. Hopefully, he gets some blood on him. Hopefully, the fighter has AIDS. Hopefully, Eric's mouth is open, and then I get to start doing the show solo. What
if that actually happened now? Like,
if I get
that'd be a hell of a
solo, terrific. Is that not what you meant?
You'll have Jordan Klein. He'll be wearing the same outfit 12 days in a row at that point. If he's got to be, I think the dude bro top stacks like thing is like Rangers, bro. They're gonna go off.
I wouldn't have any issue with that. I've been on shows with worse. I could do Jordan Klein analysis. Take some bong rips and chug some beers in between. Sounds like a good deal. By the way, we got a super chat coming in right now from Ryan Rennebaum. Ryan wants to know top single entry stack for DK and also tiers. We haven't had Ace of Spades around in a while, so I actually haven't been running tiers lineups because it's been like 2 weeks since we've had one of those tiers questions come up. So I'll run some tiers lineups right now. But the other part of this question, favorite single entry stack. If you were playing one lineup tonight, Eric, and then we'll talk about pitchers after this, who would you be stacking in that one lineup?
Hard not to like the Braves, huh? The Atlanta Braves against Cal Quantrill, who I feel like I target all the time. I was a little bit shocked, and I get it. This is a different kind of slate, but like they are just destroying our top stacks tool. I am getting to so many of them. I haven't actually ran my sims yet here, so I'm going to be doing that live while we're on the show, figuring out what I'm going to do for my 20 max. I've got 50 lineups in that $3, so going to be a fun dealio to put together. Oh, sorry, the $4 got the 20 max stuff there as well. Looking forward to putting together those while we're on the air, but I do have a single entry stack here that I'm playing in a couple of these single entry tournaments on DraftKings. Atlanta is currently them.
You know, it's funny. There's a lot of Atlanta hitters that I'm overweight to the field to as one-offs. I have more of actually Ronald Acuna as I'm looking right now. My most rostered hitter right now is Acuna.
There you go.
I'm also overweight to Ozzie Albies. I'm overweight to Austin Riley. I'm overweight to a handful of hitters in the Braves lineup. But as a stack, I'm not that much different in the field, mainly because of salary constraints. So I love the Braves' individual hitters, getting overweight to a bunch of them. As far as stacks go, I don't know if that's going to be the case for me just because of the price point. The team that I currently have the most exposure to as a stack is the Cleveland Guardians. But let me go and look at our top stacks tool, see what the team stack ownership is, and see if that's what I would actually be riding with in single entry. Yeah, Cleveland, 4% owned against Michael Soroka. Soroka has been really up and down this year, coming back from a torn Achilles, which he ended up re-tearing also while he was rehabbing. Just hasn't looked all that great this year. So Cleveland Guardians look like a team I'm going to be getting a lot of. I like their upside against Michael Soroka, who is frankly just not been good this year.
He's been better, though. The AAA stuff kind of freaks me out a little bit. He went and revamped a lot of his pitch mix at AAA. Found a little bit of the velocity. And then for me, my major thing is when a pitcher struggles, I pay a lot of attention to their first start back. We have, 3 starts of sample size for him. And I just wanted to see where that velocity was for him coming back. He looked much, much better. Now, he's never been a good starting pitcher at any point in his career. So I totally understand taking that shot as well. But going through some of the StatCast data and going through, you can go onto Samant and you can literally watch some of the pitches that he had. Saw the Jazz Chisholm. He ended up rocking him for a pretty big. He made a pretty hard hit ball turn into a double there. Jazz is back in that Miami lineup. But I was going through a lot of those pitches, and it just seems like he's back on track. It seems as though he should be okay, but overall, I'm with you. I don't think he's an above average pitcher, and the pricing just kind of it looks pretty enticing for them.
Yeah, and I mean, he's actually pitched well in the minor leagues throughout the season. Even when he was rehabbing earlier in the year and hadn't debuted at the major leagues, like he was pitching well overall across all his minor league starts. He's made 11 of them. He's a 3.31 ERA, he's striking out about a hitter per inning. And then it just hasn't looked quite the same when he's pitched at the major league level. And there have been years in the past that he's had good ERAs, but they always were paired with really poor underlying stats. So for instance, the last year that we saw him pitch a full year in the major leagues, we won't talk about 2020 because it was only 3 starts before he got hurt. And that's how long the time off for him between multiple torn Achilles was. He didn't pitch from 2020 until 2023, Soroka. So the last time we saw him pitch a full season was 2019. He had a 2.68 ERA that year, but a 4.11 expected ERA. He's never generated a lot of strikeouts. He had an unsustainable BABIP, unsustainable left on base rate. So never a pitcher I've really thought all that highly of. And I think a lot of people remember him being better than he was, but it was just because he had ERAs that were very based on luck. And we've only seen him pitch a total of 229 innings at the big league level. I don't think this is a great starting pitcher. And in a weird way also, kind of as a side note, I think the torn Achilles, the multiple torn Achilles of Michael Soroka is the greatest thing that could have happened to the Atlanta Braves organization, because every single player that's come up with him now is signing these ridiculous long-term contracts. I think it's because they saw the Soroka injury and be like, I'm going to lock down my money now. And then that's why you get guys who are like, hey, Ronald Acuna, 10-year, $100 million contract, the most ridiculous contract in baseball.
Absurd.
Because he saw the Soroka injury. He was like, I'm just going to take some of my money now and I'll give up on upside. That Acuna contract would be worth $500 million if he signed it now. But instead, he took like an 80% discount because he was afraid of injury risk. So that's why I was making the Soroka point.
Yeah, Kennedy Mathis, Soroka has never been a good starting pitcher. That's incorrect. We're talking about the underlying metrics. I know that from an ERA perspective, he's been sub 4 in 3 of his seasons. So one was all of 199 pitches long in 2020, but it's been a while. I was actually just kind of vouching for him, saying that he's looked really good in AAA, was paying a lot of attention to his velocity and to the overall pitch mix. Considering we hadn't seen him pitch in a month, he's had all of 3 starts this season. And then coming into today, I mean, I've been looking at this baseball slate since last night. So I end up going through all the pitchers individually. I take a look at AAA numbers. I kind of cross it with what I think the books are projecting. And I kind of come up with my own implied run totals and figure out exactly where I grade them. Michael Soroka isn't very high on the board.
No, he is not. So anyway, my answer is the Cleveland Guardians. The other part of this question was Ryan wanted to know who our favorite plays were in tiers. And I've got some tiers lineups to run because I saw I asked the question. We were able to answer some other questions there. And now I've got these pulled up. So do you have tiers lineups built? If not, Eric, I'll just read off. Okay.
No, I do not.
Tier 1, the hitter I got the most exposure to is Ronald Acuna. And by the way, you can make Braves stacks in here. Pretty easy to do. You don't have to worry about the Braves pricing in tiers. Tier 2, Sean Murphy. Tier 3, Ozzy Albies, Austin Riley. My second most roster choice there. More Braves. Tier 1, Tier 3, Tier 2, all Braves. Tier 4, I got to Juan Soto the most. Tier 5, I got the most to Rafael Devers. And then tier 6, I got the most of George Springer. So first few tiers, you could play all Braves in those and then mix and match some other options in the other 3 tiers. And the other one's a little bit more spread out to me. There's other options. So I'll also say my second favorite in each tier. Tier 4, it was Juan Soto. I got to the most I'd mentioned. Second most, Matt McClain. Tier 5, I got to Devers the most. Vladdy Jr. the second most. And then tier 6, George Springer. Jonathan India the second most. So there's ways you could combine Matt McClain with Jonathan India. You could go George Springer with Vladdy. Different ways you could correlate your lineups together there. Next super chat we have is from, where'd it go? It is from Sotex. Sotex said, in all seriousness, 2 of the best right here. Not even a question. You're just saying we're 2 of the best.
Thank you.
2 of the best of what?
Yeah, I was gonna say, a big asterisk next to that.
Best of what? Thank you, Sotex. We appreciate it.
The best 2 analysts that could possibly do a show on a Wednesday at 6:20 p.m. Eastern time.
Assuming that nobody else is available from the company.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah, assuming that nobody else is available on Wednesday, because we know Neil's playing softball.
Yeah. No. That's on Thursdays. This is a Wednesday.
Oh shit, my bad.
Yeah. You don't know any of Neil's personal life.
My bad. Apologize, Neil. How could I?
All right, let's go ahead and talk about pitchers. And I think where we have to start is by talking about Pablo Lopez, Eric. He's by far the most popular pitcher on the slate. He is currently projected for 54% ownership. Great matchup at home against the Kansas City Royals. If you're playing cash games, Pablo Lopez is an absolute no-brainer. Easiest button to click on the entire slate. In tournaments, he also clearly makes for a good option. The question becomes, though, how much more or less of the field do you want to get to the 50% ownership he's projected for?
Depends on how many lineups you're making, in addition to what kind of contest you're playing. And I'm playing some single entries. I'm playing some 3 max. I'm playing some 20 max. I'm playing some 150 max. I'm playing a little bit of everything today before I get to Vegas. Want to kind of like fire it off today. It's going to be a fun day. And I'm basically under the field on anything 20 and 150 max on Pablo Lopez. I think he's a phenomenal pitcher. I've really enjoyed watching him, and I'd say Minnesota's starting rotation has been kind of the highlight of our baseball team this entire season, and he's been the forerunner of it across the board. Love the stuff that we're getting. He's a north of a minus 250 or minus 240 favorite here. 277 xWOBA, 209 expected batting average with a 30% K rate, facing a Royals team that is just putrid with a 78 WRC plus against right-handed pitching and a 24.5% K rate. Everything grades out really well for Pablo Lopez, but The two pitchers at the top of the board, right next to him in salary, I love for tournaments today. Justin Steele and Kadai Senga. I'm just basically double and triple the field on them respectively. And Pablo Lopez, I'm coming in a little underweight, so I'm not going to be fading him by any means. But if I'm building one lineup, probably still has Pablo Lopez in it. He's currently in in some of my single entry stuff here. But in large field, it is so easy to just find that pivot for 200 more, 100 less. Think they're both in phenomenal spots.
Yeah, so for me, I'm underweight to the field on Pablo Lopez, but not in a significant way. He's in 45% of the lineups in the last run I did. I have to do one more run because we did just get an update where actually his ownership dropped a little bit, not substantially, but it does make a difference when he's 51% owned compared to 54, where, the margins like that matter when I'm running my lineups through our Sims tool, which to my blind eye, does 54% to 51% make a massive difference? Not really, but the data will probably get me to a little bit more of Pablo Lopez based on that. So I'll be close to the field on him. He'll be in somewhere close to half of my lineups. And I agree with you, though. I think Kodai Senga is a really good pivot. If people have watched me do shows this year, it's probably not going to be a shock to you that I bring up Kodai Senga as a pivot option in the high end, because I bring him up as a pivot option on every single slate where he's not projected for ownership. He's very inconsistent. He strikes out a ton of hitters. I talked about this same matchup yesterday, and then what ends up happening, he gets scratched after the fact, and Max Scherzer pitches instead of him. Everything I said yesterday applies to him instead of today goes to yesterday. But the one thing that's a little bit different, yesterday was a smaller slate. He was projected for a little bit more ownership. Today, he's only projected for 3% ownership. Very easy guy to get overweight to the field, too.
Agreed. I don't know how we came to the same conclusion. I wasn't doing DFS shows at the start of the year, just was so busy with the NBA streets. But Kadai Senga, from day one, I've been overweight to, I think, on every single MLB slate that I've been on, except for when he ends up, there's like one or two where he ends up super popular on like a 5 or a 6 game slate. And I just end up trimming it because there is some variance to his pitching. I mean, the ghost fork is one of the best pitches in baseball already instantly. And I think it's pretty safe to assume he's going to continue to be. But when he starts walking guys, when he's not locating, when he's not getting the fastball across, it's really problematic. 13% walk rate. You're going to run into those games where it doesn't look good. But at 5%, do I give a shit? No, I do not.
Yep. Same page as me. How aggressively are you willing to get your exposure to him?
I have 48% of him. He's 5% owned.
All right. That's a pretty good amount. I'll see what ends up happening once I rerun my lineups. I don't know that I'll get that much of him. I guarantee I'm going to be overweight to the field, though, on Kodai Senga. And if given a choice, do you prefer Senga or do you prefer Justin Steele? Based on your ownership there to Senga, I do believe he's going to be the answer.
Yeah, so I mean, I was saying double and triple in my last run beforehand, before I just plugged it in like all of about 20 seconds ago. I was looking at 23% Justin Steele and 30% Kadai Senga. So I guess it'd be 6-tuple the field, if I'm being accurate with my statement. But Justin Steele, I still like. For me, it just comes down to the K rate too. He gets buoyed by Milwaukee, where left-handed pitching, they strike out at the highest clip in all of baseball, 27.9%. But the huge difference, this lineup is filled with a hodgepodge of who the hell are yous. Like, there's just a lot of these dudes. Jahmai Jones was cut by the Dodgers, ends up getting picked up, and now he's DHing, batting 5th for the Brewers as a platoon guy. Blake Perkins is trash. Brian Anderson has been bad all season long. Thought a ballpark upgrade might look good for him. Third base, outfield utility for all you year-long players, and then for DFS, but 223 expected batting average, 30% K rate. It hasn't looked good. There are 4 batters at the back half of this lineup who strike out at a pretty high clip. Montecchio, 22.4%. Anderson, Weimer is down there at 29% as well. But you do get guys like Owen Miller, William Contreras. Yelich has kept the Ks in check, sub 22% this season. I don't know if this version of the lineup has the kind of strikeout upside I'm looking for a guy like Justin Steele, who has just a 22.3% K rate. I want to back him as a real life pitcher. Think he has a really good chance of going 6 or 7 in this one. Is that good enough on DraftKings? Probably not, but at 12%, I'm going to be double the field.
And by the way, if anybody has questions for us, go ahead and at me in the Discord chat so we could answer those, and super chats be answering those as they come in as well. We did get Einstein asked thoughts on Justin Steele, which we just covered. And then he wants to know about the Baltimore Orioles as a potential stack today. So we've got the Orioles. Let's see. So we get all the information on them. They are going up against Randy Vasquez. Kind of surprised, only projected for 3% ownership against Vasquez. A couple things about him. Number one, I don't think he's all that great. I don't expect him to work super deep into the game. Also, earlier in the day, if you're looking at some of our data on Odd Shopper, under 4.5 strikeouts for Randy Velasquez was our number one projected prop bet of the day. I think the Orioles are a solid looking stack. They're on the road in New York, very favorable hitters park. I don't rate Randy Vasquez all that well. Not all that much ownership. I think it makes sense to certainly get overweight to the field to the Orioles, and a team you could consider playing in a single entry lineup as well, Einstein.
Yeah, I went on a deep dive of him last night on Lindy's Leans Likes Locks. He's AAA guy, 24 years old, and everything across the board isn't all that appealing from the AAA numbers. 12% walk rate at that league, 24.3% K rate, 5.08 FIP. Now you don't get the XFIP benefit, but with a 1.61 whip at the AAA level, that can get really problematic against a team like Baltimore that not only brings lefty power to the table, but brings speed to the table. And I think Baltimore could really have a heyday here. They're one of my favorite stacks on the board.
All right, there we go. So we're on the same page there. I do think that the Orioles make sense as a contrarian stack. Now let's go talk about some of the mid-range pitchers, because there are a couple of them that are popular. One of them has been a popular pitcher a ton this year, and it's very rarely worked out when he's been popular, and Bobby Miller. He has basically gotten his ass kicked every single slate that he's been chalked. And then the other one is Seth Lugo, who I honestly don't ever remember a slate where Seth Lugo has ever been chalked. But it kind of goes to speak to what the cheaper options look like at pitching. Between Seth Lugo and Bobby Miller, do you have a preference of these chalk pitchers? Do you like both of them, or do you like neither of them?
I think Bobby Miller's okay against Pittsburgh here. You're still in a spot with... I'm assuming with this lineup, you're still going to get the Reynolds, Sawinski, Palacios could be leading off here in this spot. They've done that a couple of times as a lefty lead off here. Carlos Santana, switch hitter. Number of pieces from the Pittsburgh side that look good. They've been outperforming expectations pretty much all season long in every single regard. They do have some quality hitters, specifically the Reynolds-Sawinski combination, who I'm sure I'll be overweight to in tournaments. But Bobby Miller does have a 341 expected slugging, 295 xWOBA, and I think he's going to do a pretty good job going forward of at least finding strikeouts in favorable spots. Now, he's just a 21.7% K rate here at the big league level thus far, but you're going to get Jack Sawinski. There's a lot of power, but 31% K rate. And this is just kind of like with Seth Lugo, you have a lot of these same things. You get the better ballpark, I would say, as well here. 451 expected slugging, 269 expected batting average. You're getting a lot worse peripherals with that identical 21.9% K rate. You get Ohtani, who did make that lineup. And then I've just been waiting to see him get another shot at the big league level. I know he struck out a lot once upon a time. He's found a way to kind of keep it in check. But Joe Adele, I'm completely in love with. I feel like I'm just going to be underweight to both of these. Bobby Miller, not as much, but Seth Lugo, I'm definitely going to be way underweight to. And I'm going to be way overweight to the Ohtani Adele combination.
Yep, I have no issue with that at all. Joe Adele, we'll see what ends up happening. You know, he's always been a guy who comes up to the major leagues, struggles, strikes out a ton, is in the minor leagues, hits a ton of homers. Everybody goes, when is Joe Adele going to get called up? He gets called up, strikes out a bunch, goes back to the minor leagues, and then there's an injury and they have nobody left to call up other than him. But that Angel situation is a disaster right now. So you've got Shohei Ohtani, who yesterday when he was leaving, I didn't realize at first that it was a blister injury. I was watching the game at the time. I was like, especially how everything was trending for them. Mike Trout had just gotten hurt. Rendon it felt like another chip falling. Luckily, not a serious injury to Ohtani. Like you said, he's going to be in the lineup today. Joe Adele's an interesting one. There's definite home run upside at a cheap price point. He's either going to home run or he's going to go 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. That's basically the range of outcomes you get with Joe Adele, no?
100% it. Of course, his one game this season that he appears hits an absolute bomb. He's hit over 500 foot home runs this season at AAA. Google it. It's the wildest stuff. I've had him on my year-long team for God, how long? This dynasty team. I've just kind of been waiting for another crack at it because, he's never been good for me. It's never been a positive. I'm hoping the strikeouts stay in check. I hope he gets a long shot here now with Mike Trout on the shelf, and I hope he's able to make good with it because I like the guy a lot. I've always liked the profile, and I've always liked the power. It's impossible not to. Hopefully he's able to put it together, but no way batting cleanup today against a chalky mid-range pitcher that I'm not going to be overweight.
Some lineup news. Tommy Edman was just scratched from the Cardinals lineup. So just want to make you guys aware that he is no longer going to be in there for them. But, not anything that's earth shattering or anything. Just want to make sure you guys are aware that if you have Tommy Edman in your lineups, take him out. Now, if we go ahead and look at the other pitchers on the slate, there is one mid-range pitcher that stands out to me as a good pivot off of Bobby Miller and Seth Lugo. I'll give you a hint for who it is, Eric.
I think I know who it is.
It's somebody we hated last year that we made fun of a lot. Do you know who it is?
Now you've got me thinking, because I was going to say somebody that we hated a lot being Tommy Henry. Not Osvaldo Bido. Who did we hate together last year? Who did we just absolutely hate in the mid-range?
He was injured to start.
Lance Lynn, of course. Yes. Lance Lynn.
All right. So Lance Lynn was really good in the second half of last year. Absolutely terrible in the first half, coming back from a knee surgery. This year so far, he's been fairly terrible in the first half. Here's one saving grace for him, though. He is striking a lot of hitters out this year, and he still works very deep into games. So there's a very big upside with Lance Lynn. 26.9% K rate. The matchup is rough against the Toronto Blue Jays, but for his ownership, I think it makes for a pretty good pivot off of guys like Bobby Miller and Seth Lugo. They're both about twice as owned as him, and I just don't think they outscore him 2-1 the time. So I don't feel great about the floor of Lance Lynn. I wouldn't play him in a cash game. For tournament purposes, though, he's cheap for the kind of strikeout upside he's shown this year, and it's always sneaky upside with Lance Lynn that he could regularly throw 105, 110 pitches, go 7-8 innings, and a lot of other pitchers don't get that kind of leash. So for upside in tournaments, I like Lance Lynn in the mid-range. Do you like Lance Lynn, or is there somebody else you have your eye on as a pivot off of the Seth Lugo and Bobby Miller guys?
I have zero Lance Lynn, and it's all weather related. I don't think that game's going to play. The weather looks really, really bad in Chicago, and I doubt they're going to play baseball. I just saw that there was an update. Other places, let me find this. But yeah, it looked really, really dire. Otherwise, I would have been very interested in taking a shot on Lance Lynn. Also, I've been working on trying to project out better no run first inning, yes run first innings. I've never been into nerfies and yerfies, but everybody, it's like all the rage on the Twitter's done. I think I've recommended maybe one in a year and a half of baseball, and I've had a lot of baseball bets in my life. It's just not my cup of tea. Lance Lynn, I ran into this last night. I want you to guess his ERA in the first inning this season.
$1 million?
10.4.
All right, I was close.
It's $1 million. That's it.
It's $1 million.
Gigantic ERA that he has had in the first innings. He has had such an issue coming out of the gate. And then he gets to the back half on the lineups and he starts mowing dudes down with a fastball where he can actually get some swings and misses. But it has been so hard to watch Lance Lynn. Yes, we targeted him a lot. Then we rostered him a lot towards the end of last season as he started to get acclimated. But yeah, Lance Lynn, I would like it a lot better if the weather didn't look like complete dog shit.
Yeah, I'm looking up the weather right now. It is a little bit worse than it was earlier in the day. I would like to play some of this game, but I'm going to wait until we get, let's see, what time does that game start? 8 p.m. Eastern time?
Yep.
Yeah, 8:10. I'll leave it in for now, but a strong consideration for taking it. I'm looking at the weather right now, about a 50% chance of rain going to 40% chance of rain throughout the night. So I would definitely say it's risky. Not enough for me to say that it's for sure going to not play, but certainly risky.
I would say I would have it higher than 50% based on what I'm looking at. And then, good old Google. Let me take one more look. It just doesn't look like something that I really want to force in Lance Lynn. Now, this could be a fun spot where if this game starts on time, you just kind of roll the dice. But if he's going to be any which way owned, there's no point. I would rather just kind of hit eject. He is 15% owned in our projections right now, a little bit of negative leverage. I'd be happy to turn that into my boy for the day, Brian Bayo.
All right, so talk to me about Brian Bayo. Why is he the guy that is your favorite pivot in the mid-range?
I don't think people understand how many great improvements he's made overall this season. He had never really gotten the strikeouts. He still only has a 21.8% K rate, but that's kind of mitigated at this mid-range because nobody outside of Lance Lynn, who I don't think has a chance to play baseball, has a K rate that you're really looking at. If you're trying to play some of these expensive stats, you have to kind of find reasons to get to the Dean Kremers or to the Bitos, Osvaldo Bido, or somebody in this nature. But I keep landing on Brian Bayo because I think he can pitch really deep into these games. He has this amazing sinker that just basically picks up ground balls at a 57.4% clip this season. He is giving up no, and I do mean no fly balls here over the course of this season. Just 10 barrels last season, even when he was struggling. 14, it's been up a little bit, 6.5% barrel percentage this season. 41.2% hard hit percentage looks one way, but with the ground ball rate, along with Ks that I do expect to start showing up at the big league level with how live the fastball plays, I think he's going to be able throw that changeup a little bit more off of it. And going forward, I would be surprised if we didn't see him with a 22, 23, 24% K rate by the end of the year, based on what I've seen his last 3 or 4 starts. He's had some electric stuff against Miami, a team that's been just rocking 7 innings, 2 hits, only 1 earned, lots of ground balls. Same thing against the White Sox, back-to-back outings against the Yankees going 7. He just doesn't give up hits. And now that he's limiting the walks, limiting some of the self-inflicted damage, he is so low owned on this slate. I'm very, very much against this 10 total. The fact that it's gone from a 9.5 to a 10 total, a little bit surprising considering I think he is going to just have some strikeouts. Yes, the Texas Rangers have a terrifying offense, but he has been so good at avoiding problems this season. I'll roll the dice.
All right, we got a couple more super chats, so let's check those out. And then we'll look at some of the value pitchers that we like as punts today. Build some lineups in the MLB lineup generator to talk about our favorite stacks. But right here, we've got Bobby Bees. Bobby Bees wants to know, as a 2v2, Kramer and Steele or Lopez and Lugo as his pitching combination for the $3 mini max on DK. And then he says, much love. Kramer, Steele, or Lopez, Lugo. I'm going to lean towards Pablo Lopez and Seth Lugo.
I am too, but I don't like it. It's just that I'm so vehemently against Dean Kramer. I like offense in Baltimore and New York. Dean Kramer's so bad. 524 expected slugging, 374 xWOBA. The best thing he has going for him is Adley Rutschman's his catcher. That's about the only good thing he has going for him because the stuff is not appealing. I find Baltimore's starting rotation to be pretty abhorrent, to be quite honest. Like, they're not good. And they have 2 of the best bullpen arms in baseball behind them if they as setup men. Like, this team just needs to go out and get starters because they really got nothing outside of Tyler Wells from time to time. I can't really remember a time that I was overweight to a Baltimore pitcher on any given slate.
Yeah, and Tyler Wells is somebody who's kind of kicked my ass a few times this year because I didn't buy into him earlier in the year, and he's just been great, and now I'm more bought into him, but certainly wasn't earlier in the year. But Lopez, Lugo, that is my answer for you, Bobby Bees. Next question is from Mr. CoolCam97. He wants to know the top contrarian stack, but for FanDuel. So One thing I will say, to an extent, everything is kind of contrarian today. There's not a single team projected for more than 10% ownership on either DraftKings or FanDuel. Right now, the 2 teams that are projected for the most ownership on FanDuel, the Atlanta Braves, 8.3% projected ownership as a team. Boston Red Sox also 8.3% projected ownership as a team. So I don't know. What do we want to say is the threshold for being contrarian on this slate?
Let's go. Well, I mean, it's kind of different. On FanDuel, nobody's got ownership share in double digits. So let's put it at like 6% or lower.
I'm going to go with the team we talked about before then, the Baltimore Orioles against the New York Yankees and Randy Vasquez.
I'm so here for it. That entire game, I just want it to be 14-13 today.
All right, there we go. So that's going to be both Eric and I's answer. Mr. Cool Cam, I think you should be running with the Baltimore Orioles as your top contrarian stack for FanDuel purposes. Now let's go and talk about some of the punt pitchers, Eric. And I'm not going to say this is the best slate in the world for punt pitching because there's none of them that I'm really super interested in. I think the best place to really get different with your pitchers is just by pivoting at the high end. If you're looking at projected ownership right now, there's some ownership going to like Tommy Milone only based on price point, but by and large part, the expensive pitchers are picking up some ownership and then it's really spread out as far as value pitchers go. Are there any cheap pitchers that you do feel fairly confident in?
No, not fairly confident. I do have some shares of Patrick Sandoval, just de facto. Maybe one day the K rate shall return. It has not been today. Michael Soroka, he showed up in all lineup for me. I think Tommy Milone at flat 4K makes some sense, but now there's negative leverage going there. Before coming into this show, that wasn't the case. Just ballpark with the fact that like he's a 4K pitcher that can give you access to certain bats. I think that's somewhat in play. I want to ask you about Graham Ashcraft, though, because this is somebody that I've been kind of struggling with today. It's a Washington National spot where I do think that overall you can definitely they can be had here in this spot. They don't strike out a lot against right-handed pitching by any means, but this has been a very, very inconsistent pitcher. Once upon a time was at least kind of keeping the ground balls in check here, was getting lit up, looked better last time out, but I'm just trying to make a case for anything down here that's going a little bit overlooked. He did have 7 Ks along with those 10 ground balls against San Diego, by far the best he had looked in a start all year long, or at least since opening day against Pittsburgh. Do you have any Ashcraft?
No, and I think he's terrible.
I do too.
Like, you watch him pitch, and if you watched him pitch for 1 inning, you would assume he's really good. And you think he's a really good prospect too, because like he throws this cutter that moves a little bit. It's upwards of 100 miles per hour, but he just gets his ass kicked all of the time. And also you'd look at the stuff and be like, oh, for sure, this has to be a guy who generates swing and misses. Not the case. He doesn't get strikeouts. He gives up a ton of runs. He has a 6.66 ERA this year, 5.62 expected ERA, doesn't generate strikeouts. So, I get he's cheap, but a 17.1% K rate this year, 15.3% last year. It's hard for me to get there. I honestly don't think I've ever played him in DFS other than like the straight lineup or two that he shows up in.
I haven't either, but I'm looking for anything sub 7K that isn't. I mean, again, Patrick Sandoval, Michael Soroka, these are the kind of guys that I'm contemplating. And it doesn't mean that I think that they're good. It means that I can get to Atlanta. I can get to more expensive offenses across the board. Do I think John Gray's good? Yeah, but then I can play some Boston lefties that have just routinely been smashers of the baseball over the course of this season. I like the Arizona Mets game as well. I think that that's going a little bit underlooked, especially from the Mets side that I want to be getting to. They're not exactly cheap, trying to get up to a 4,900 Lindor, a 5,200 Peter Alonso. So there's at least some bats that I want to get to that are more expensive. So I'm looking for any case I can make sub 7K, and I'm just kind of like rotating a couple of them.
All right, so let's go ahead and build out some lineups in the lineup generator. Unless, do you have anything else you want to add here at pitcher, Eric?
No, it's one of those slates where I do think Pablo Lopez is really good chalk. But it's hard when I really believe in Justin Steele from a real life perspective. Think he could pitch deep into that game, and Milwaukee should provide him some extra Ks. And then Kadai Senga, it's the typical, he's 5%. I'm going to be way over the field.
All right, so let's go ahead and build some lineups in the MLB lineup generator, the easiest tool that we have for startup DFS players. This is going to build up to 20 lineups for you on DraftKings and FanDuel, whichever site it is you play on. You're also going to put in some settings here. So let's start with DraftKings, Jordan. We'll build balanced lineups with this being a big slate, and let's see what pops up. It's an interesting slate. There's not all that much chalk to really talk about today other than Pablo Lopez at pitcher. So I'm interested to see if we're building balanced lineups, how much of him we ultimately end up getting to. And if you guys want to sign up for this, use the link below. Less than $5 when you sign up using that link. And this, like I said, is just such a user-friendly tool for new DFS players, to where it is going to do most of the work for you. Or if you're somebody who wants to hand build some of your own lineups, you could build some lineups in this and then mix and match from the players that pop up most frequently. Did you see that ownership that we had there on Pablo Lopez, Eric?
No, I did not.
20 lineups. He is in all 20 of them, which I honestly don't have a massive issue with if you're only playing 20 lineups.
I don't either.
Second most rostered pitcher, Bobby Miller, showing up a little bit overweight to the field, but nothing really all that crazy. And then usually when we're building lineups in the lineup generator, you'll see one clear stack rise to the top of it, where we'll be like, oh, look, the Dodgers are showing up in like half of our lineups, or it'll be the Twins in some recent slates. That is not the case today. We're really spread out at offense. What do you make of that, Eric? And what does it say about the stacks for today? We don't have any hitter showing up in more than 25% of our lineup generator lineups.
It means that it's spread out in terms of the stacks. We're getting to the expensive pitchers. It's just hard to stack up at Atlanta. I mean, that's been something that's been in years past. It hasn't been so much this year. Think about like last year or 2 years ago was Toronto. I feel like we talked about Toronto on every slate, where it's like, yes, they're the best offense in baseball. Yes, you want to play Vladdy, you want to play Bichette, you want to play all these guys, but can you get to them at 6K, 6,500? The Braves are now that team, and it's just very difficult to imagine a scenario where if you aren't artificially boosting them or doing what I'm doing, and I'm trying to just make a case for some of these sub 7K guys and rotating between them, that's really your only path to getting to Atlanta. If you want to play any kind of chalky pitchers, and right now the lineup generator is spitting out lineups that are far more optimal than it would seem. I am at the moment where I'm trying to force in Atlanta and hoping they score 12, 14 runs like it seems they do every other day. You're definitely going to run into cheaper batters by default.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see how much different FanDuel is going to look than DraftKings, because just looking at the lineups we have built here, we're getting to a lot of Pablo Lopez. let's see, which stack is that showing up most frequently? Washington, Meneses, Candelario, Lane Thomas. Yeah, so it looks like the Nationals we're getting to the most, but it's not like there's any one stack that's absolutely showing up a ton for us. If you keep scrolling down, I'm curious to see what other pitchers showed up, Jordan. And it's not going to be too much of anybody else because of where our ownership is. But yeah, Kodai Senga 15% of lineups. I think that's a reasonable amount to play him there. Let's go and check out some FanDuel lineups now. I want to see what also looks good from a FanDuel perspective. And by the way, Mike Trout out 4 to 8 weeks after ongoing surgery. That was the news that just came across.
The way he talked about it, that's a guy who has to go in for surgery and doesn't want to do it. Like, that's what he sounded like when he talked about it.
I mean, his team's in the playoff mix.
I know. They'd be the last wild card team as of last weekend, and now they're out of it. Just wild.
I think there's also an understanding from Trout that if it's not this year, it's probably never going to happen in Los Angeles with the Angels, because he signed this long-term deal. Maybe they find a way to move him in the offseason, but it seems somewhat unlikely to me that Ohtani is going to be back next year, right?
Extremely unlikely. Sorry, I would be shocked if he wasn't. Sorry, you're okay. Just, whatever, just having my green juice. Don't mind me. I would be shocked if he wasn't a Dodger next year.
I don't know necessarily a Dodger, because I think like the Mets might just spend a shit ton of money for him.
Or the Mariners could do the Ichiro thing because they have such a built-in fan base for that organization. I would pay him $500 million if I'm the Mariners and just say, we'll build everything around you. It's the best pitcher's park in baseball. Enjoy.
I think he's going to get more than $500 million.
That's wild. He probably deserves that. I just kind of threw that number out as like what I think I've heard from other analysts, just kind of saying 50, 55 million a year, 10 years. So yeah, 600 million maybe.
There's just going to be such a crazy bidding for him. The other thing too is, he adds a lot to your franchise in terms of hype, ticket sales, the chance he might be able to get other players to sign. Like, he brings value outside of just the baseball aspect. And by the way, he just happens to be the most valuable player in baseball at the exact same time. But let's go ahead and build some of these FanDuel lineups. Same deal, Jordan. Let's build balanced lineups and see what pops up. Something else too, while Jordan is building these lineups, if you guys haven't done yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you ever want to catch any of our content after the fact, check out our podcast channel as well. We're going to be doing some podcast exclusive content starting later on this summer as we get closer to football season. All the more reason to go subscribe to it. And over there, you're going to find a lot of our same content, obviously, but it's just another way for you guys to get access to it. So if you go subscribe to our podcast channel, if you get a chance, leave us a 5-star review. We do really appreciate it. It helps us grow that channel out. But anyway, FanDuel lineup's done being built, and we do have a team that's popping up predominantly on FanDuel, the Cleveland Guardians, which I'm happy with, Eric. I'd mentioned that's overall one of my favorite stacks of the day. What do you make of the Guardians being the team we're getting the most of here at FanDuel? And then, of course, Pablo Lopez, the most rostered pitcher again.
Yeah, phenomenal price point on everybody. Sub 4K, Jose Ramirez, speed, power, all the things that go together there. Completely makes sense to me. I hate Andres Jimenez with an undying passion. He could have won me a tournament the other night and put up like 0. Again, this guy all the time. But overall, again, Byron Buxton, I love as a one-off today. I have him in a lot of places. Hard not to like it. I'm not playing on FanDuel today, but looks a lot like some DK lineups that we have as well.
I mean, the big thing about this slate is the only real chalk, like uber chalk of the day, is Pablo Lopez. Yes. If you're looking at offenses, there is no chalk. We were talking about it before. Every single team is projected for less than 10% ownership on DraftKings and FanDuel. So you're largely kind of playing the offenses you think are in the best spots. You don't have to worry about any kind of crazy chalk. I like the spot the Guardians are in. I think they make sense to get to. And then if you scroll down, it does look like the Braves are the team we're getting to the second most. Ozzy Albies, Ronald Acuna. I also like them a whole bunch today. And then some more Guardians, Ahmed Rosario, Steven Kwan. Our second most rostered pitcher there is Lance Lynn, but that is also going to depend on your appetite for risk. I mentioned before, if that game looks like it's going to play, I like Lance Lynn. If the weather starts to look worse in the next 30 minutes, I'm just going to remove that game out of my player pool entirely. Anything else you notice from the FanDuel lineups, Eric? If not, we'll talk about some top stacks.
No, let's go to top stacks.
All right. Top stack time. And, it's an interesting one because as Jordan's about to show you on screen and as we've been talking about over the course of this show, there is no real chalk at offense, right? There is no team you're looking at and being like, oh, this is one crazy highly owned stack or anything. You and I have already talked about, we like the Guardians. We like the Baltimore Orioles. We like the Atlanta Braves. especially some of their hitters as one-offs, considering how expensive they are. It can be tricky to make 5-man stacks them on DraftKings or 4-man stacks them on FanDuel in certain spots. But are there any offenses you do view as over-owned you don't want to get to because of their ownership?
Boston and Texas. I think both of them, Boston specifically, they are the most negatively leveraged team. So that shouldn't come as a surprise. But I think this is one where it could play out very much in either way. John Gray has been a very serviceable pitcher. The Ks are down. He's going to give up contact, and that's not ideal with how good some of these lefties can be here from Boston. But I'm a little bit surprised that they're pulling this kind of ownership on a slate that's pretty wide open. So I would call them definitely over-owned. In terms of the slate that we're looking at. Toronto, I think that they come in over-owned purely because I don't think that game, I think it's more likely to be postponed than it is to play. And so I'm definitely away from that. I don't have a single pitcher or hitter in that game in my lineups. And Minnesota, it's a little bit wild to see them as one of the top value plays of the slate here. You do have an expensive Byron Buxton, Carlos Correa, shortstop leading off. That's kind of been their new thing. I think they're a little bit over-owned here against Alec Marsh. Now, Alec Marsh is not good, but overall, yesterday was the first day in a while where you saw Minnesota stacks have any capability of putting up a game in bulk. Joey Gallo's now been sent to the 8-hole where 59% hard hit percentage. He's got to make contact. That's great, but I just don't find this lineup to be all that appealing to be backing, even against a Kansas City starter here in Alec Marsh. I don't think is all that good. So I'm a little bit short on that ownership as well.
There's no team I'm aggressively shorting. It is kind of funny because I'm looking at the finalized version of my lineup. There's a pitcher we like, Eric, that we're overweight to. I'm also stacking them a decent amount as well. The Arizona Diamondbacks, the same reasons that we said that we like Kodai Senga and him being lower owned in tournaments, all the variants. I mean, the same thing goes the other way. He could walk everybody in the first 3 innings, come out, and Arizona goes off. So it's funny. Senga is one of my most overweight players as far as pitchers are concerned on the slate. And then I'm right now getting to the Diamondbacks, my second most rostered stack. I love both sides of it. I think there's a lot of upside on both ends. Does that make sense to you, or would you rather pick a side for yourself?
Sounds like MLB DFS to me.
Particularly, it doesn't usually happen on slates of this size. It is for this one for me, though.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. And again, I'm running everything through the pre-contest simulator here. It's fantastic. Does a lot of the work for me where I provide the lineups that I think are going to look like what the field's throwing out there, and I'm going to get it trimmed to my top 20, my top 150, and I'm going to be firing those away. Very interested to see, because again, other than manually boosting a couple of pitchers here, I haven't changed a whole heck of a lot. So I'll have a better idea of exactly where my stacks fall in a minute. I would be surprised if I didn't have any Arizona, just because I think I've been routinely overweight to him. Doesn't help to have Ketel Marte not in that lineup in some capacity. Like, that would be awesome. He's very good. I hate Perdomo leading off. I think it's one of the dumber things that they do. Why not just put Alec Thomas and have him lead off with a 407 expected slugging, a 42.1% hard hit percentage, got retooled to AAA, and you still fricking put Perdomo in the lead up spot? It's so dumb to me. So other than Perdomo, I'm hoping that I do get to some Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, so I'm going to upload my lineups into Fantasy Cruncher from the Sims tool. And then I could tell you which players it is from the Diamondbacks I'm getting the most exposure to once I get these. Yep, they're in here. So Arizona, I am getting to. So here's the 3 players I have the most of. Probably not going to be massively surprising. Well, maybe a little bit, actually. Corbin Carroll is the one I get the most of. That shouldn't be surprising. The 2 hitters I have the next most of are Evan Longoria and Jake McCarthy. Jake McCarthy, we've been pretty high on this year, certainly higher than anywhere else in the industry. And that's actually really been to my benefit this year. A lot of my best slates have been days that I've stacked the Arizona Diamondbacks and been high on Jake McCarthy because he's shown some power upside this year. He steals bases. He's always cheap. People are almost never playing him. So I do like Jake McCarthy a lot in those stacks. He's a much better fantasy player than real life asset. So those 3 guys are the 3 that I'm getting to the most from the Diamondbacks.
I do not mind that in any way, shape, or form.
Any other stacks that are really standing out to you?
Baltimore is really standing out to me. I don't see how you don't get to Baltimore. I don't see how you don't get to the Yankees as well. I think both of those teams, against these respective starting pitchers are in a fantastic spot. I can play a little bit of best available. And what's nice about both of those stacks is you do have some cheapies that get to come along for the ride. You have a Ryan O'Hearn who's been batting sub 4K cleanup for, it feels like a couple of weeks now. You get on the Yankee side, a pretty underpriced Giancarlo Stanton, somebody you've called out on a lot of these slates. There's some relief even for some of these, the best hitters available in those lineups. So pretty easy for me to kind of piece together Baltimore, New York stacks. I like the way that they look when I was building out earlier.
And are there any super contrarian stacks you're getting to, like any of these teams that are 1, 2, 3% owned?
Yeah. So the one that really stood out to me before was the Angels. I have a ton of them. They are 1% ownership share. Specifically, getting to a lot of 2 and 3 mans of them. Joe Adell is just popping for me. Shohei Ohtani just popping for me. There's really no way that I'm not going to get to Shohei Ohtani in this kind of a spot where it's Seth Lugo on the other side, who's popular. I think that one of my favorite things in DFS is just that you get a poor pitcher who ends up chalked because of opportunity cost. You need to have that cheapie. I love targeting him with bats. Even getting to overweight Mickey Moniak, Hunter Renfroe, I could see how this goes south, and I could see how Seth Lugo mows them down, but there's a lot of leverage to be had on the days this stack goes off.
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of funny. Actually, let me check what their ownership is before I speak out of turn here. The ownership, that's a little bit higher now. I was going to say another team I'm getting a bunch of now is actually the Washington Nationals against Graham Ashcraft, who you and I had talked about before. I mentioned I don't think Ashcraft is any good. The Nationals are only projected for 5% ownership as a team. So Nationals are another team that I'm overweight to. Ashcraft gives up a bunch of runs. He doesn't generate a lot of strikeouts. The Nationals are super cheap. So I think that's a team that makes sense. As far as really low owned, I also think we should be looking at the Padres. Project for less than 2% ownership. The top of the order, which, I mean, for the purpose of making stacks, I don't even know we have to care all that much about the bottom of the order anyway. The top of this order, though, Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, Xander Bogaerts, they are really solid at the top of the order. And I do think this Padres team is going to put it together sooner rather than later. I felt that way a few times this year, but we have seen it like yesterday, even before Ohtani got hurt, he was getting hit pretty hard by the Padres. I do think there's a team with a lot of upside. I'm going to be interested in them in whenever they're in a decent matchup and they're less than 2% owned. It's a team that I think from just an ownership standpoint and the amount of talent that's in the lineup, I like the San Diego Padres. Yep. Do you get to them at all?
A little bit. I'm getting to more Dodgers in that late night window, and I am going to play the late night slate as well. So I'll have some extra exposure. I don't have to try to force them in here on this slate because I will get some. I know I'll get some Dodgers on the shorter slate coming up tonight, and but yeah, I'll get some Padres on the later slate coming up tonight.
All right, so here's what I think we should do, Eric, and then I'll read off just who ended up with as my most rostered hitters at each position. Dong picks though. The other time that you and I did this, I gave Kyle Schwarber as my home run pick. You told me it was said it was Beatty. You said it was 2. You said I wasn't allowed to pick Kyle Schwarber, even though we made rules and it was just anybody who wasn't at Coors Field. And then Kyle Schwarber homers right away. And
yeah, and Brett Beatty did 2 out of the 8 hole, and I threw that one out there for the people.
How about today though? Who are you picking as your home run pick today? And it could be anybody. I'm not going to limit you in the same way you limit me.
How about this one? So we did a long-term one. I'm pretty high on this Baltimore team today. Cedric Mullins out of the 5 hole plus 750 on FanDuel.com. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Let's see. All right. I'm going to go. All right. You're not allowed to shame me for this one, though.
I'm ready.
Heimer Candelario against Graham Ashcraft.
That's fine. I'm on Washington plus 1.5. I'm okay with it.
He's one of the hitters that I'm getting the most exposure to relative to the field. And also a lot of homers lately over the last 2 weeks, 4 homers for Candelario. He has homered in each of his last 2 starts, but Candelario, he's kind of having a sneaky okay season. And I really do like the upside of this Washington Nationals team. Lowish owned against Graham Ashcraft, I don't think is any good. So not that I think the Nationals offense is any good, but I think the Nationals offense is better than what Graham Ashcraft is. And if I go through the spots I have the most exposure to at pitcher, no shock. Pablo Lopez is the pitcher I ended up getting the most exposure to. Do you have your lineups finalized, Eric? If not, I can just read.
Read yours off and I'll have mine in. I'm just finishing everything up in the dealio.
So at pitcher, Pablo Lopez, I got the most exposure to. If I'm looking at a cheap pitcher, it's just mixing and matching. There's nobody that I've got like a crazy amount of. I'm with you. I did end up getting overweight to Brian Bayo at just 3% owned. I got to well overweight to feel closer to 20% of Brian Bayo. So I like him as a contrarian pitcher. Keibert Ruiz, I got to a good amount at catcher. First base, I'm really spread out, but Wilmer Flores, the first baseman I overall liked the most. Good matchup for him against Tommy Milone. He's hitting towards the top of the order. Super cheap as well. Almost min price over on DraftKings. I like Wilmer Flores there. Second base, Ozzy Albies. Third base, I did get Heimer Candelario as my most rostered third baseman.
Ooh.
Stop.
That is nice. I like when that shows up. That's a fun, nice piece of leverage.
That's why I gave him as my home run pick.
Okay.
That was the main reason.
Thank you for your explanation.
Shortstop, I got to Ahmed Rosario the most, but Mookie Betts right behind him. Mookie might as well be eligible at every single position on DraftKings and FanDuel, and that would be sensible to me. Dude could play every spot. And then in outfield, I got to the most of Ronald Acuna, the second most of Corbin Carroll. Eric, what did you end up getting to there?
All right. As I upload this here live, I'm literally just copying and pasting as I'm talking. So I got to Pablo Lopez actually the most at pitcher, 42%. So I'm still underweight. Kadai Senga 2, sitting at right around 40% in the final run. Bobby Miller ended up popping for me. I don't like that. Might be able to change something there. Then Justin Steele. I'm undercutting Seth Lugo by quite a bit. Brian Bayo ended up 15%. That makes me happy. My highest owned at catcher. I got to Sean Murphy the most. Will Smith second. At first base, ended up getting to Matt Olson, Shohei Ohtani, Ryan O'Hearn. Second base, ended up with Jordan Westberg and Eduardo Escobar. Third base, Luis Renifo. That's going to change. Brett Beatty as well, who always pops for me. It just is what it is. Orlando Arcia, Gunnar Henderson. At shortstop, and in the outfield, I'll give you 4, mainly because 3 of them are Braves: Ronald Acuna, Michael Harris, Eddie Rosario, and Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, and then we got one final question in Discord from Einstein. He wants to know how we feel about the Giants today against Tommy Milone. I like them particularly as one-offs. In terms of stacks, I have 5% of them, which isn't a massive amount. It's kind of hard to stack the Giants because of the amount of pinch hitting they do, especially now that they're getting healthier. But a couple of individual hitters. Wilmer Flores is one of my most rostered hitters, talked about as my most rostered first baseman. And then JD Davis, I also like a whole bunch at third base. But Giants I like as a stack. Did you get to the Giants at all, just to answer Einsteinium's question before we log off?
1 second here. No, I did not get to the Giants.
Yeah, a little bit of the Giants. By the way, also keep an eye on that weather in Chicago. We got some people talking about it in the YouTube chat. Rinpack, who lives in Chicago, is saying that it hasn't started raining in Chicago. And I mean, that's sometimes the best weather is looking out the window when you live in that area. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on it. I do have exposure to the game at the moment, but I'm prepared to pull it out of my lineups in the next hour or so if the weather starts to look worse. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you haven't done yet, hit that thumbs up, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good luck with all your lineups tonight. See you guys back here tomorrow. Peace out.